Okay, what is going on? Welcome on in for the VGB show, episode 5. Let me switch scenes here so that you can see our good friend. There he is. There he is. The Zubby Dub himself. How are you today?
Good, thank you, Plash.
Good,
How's it
good.
going?
All good here. Thank you very much. Before we get into our conversation, we actually have had a theme song written for the show
No.
by the one and only Happy Hippo. Thank you so much for that, Happy. So why don't we all listen to the VGB theme song for the very first time? You ready for this, Zub?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Ready? In 3, 2, 1, go. Oh no. Oh no. Hold on. Start it over. Ready? 3,
Okay.
2, 1, go.
It's the VGBs, they know all their stuff. The VGBs, no, it's not just a bluff. Let's talk about games, no, not 30 frames. The VGBs.
There it is.
VGB show, tune in now.
Tune
Yay!
in now. That was perfect. Perfect.
That was
Big
perfect. Well
claps,
done, Happy.
Big claps.
That's
Oh.
so good. I love it. It's so professionally done.
Hell yeah. It's great. My favorite part is the oh no, not 30 frames. That's the best
Oh
part.
no, not 30 frames.
Not 30
Oh.
frames.
She knows us so well.
Hell yeah. How are you, Zub? How are you?
I am good. I am. I've been playing a lot of video games on my time off, and
Ooh.
unfortunately, next week is my first full week back in work for a while. So the gaming's going to be much less.
No, but video games, but VGB.
But video games. But don't worry, I'll be still gaming like I always do.
Hell
But
yeah.
we'll get there. What about you? How have you been?
Me, I've been good. Been good. Pretty all right. Welcome on in, Taya, and lurk away, Merkwin. So we are. Yeah, I've just been chilling up this week. It's pretty much every week is the same for me. I work, I chill, I play video games. I try to keep on top of. Lately, I've been playing a couple games at once, which is kind of weird for me. Normally, I kind of have my streaming game and then a game on the side that I'm playing in my free time. But right now I have like 4 games I'm rotating between in my free time, and then like I'm starting to do more variety stuff on Twitch itself too. So just so many games, man, so many games. But what you been playing this week?
Well, I've been playing quite a bit, but we don't want to be going on too long with because I'm still on the PS5. I'm still trying to make as much use out of it as possible.
Oh yeah, understandable.
But I decided to. Obviously, I got PS Plus again now, and I've got PS Now, which
Ooh.
back when I had the PS4 in the early days when PS Now first came out, it was just a streaming service. Which obviously depends on your internet connection, and even if you have the best internet connection in the world, it depends how close you are to their servers, right? So you're always going to have a little bit of lag. So
Yeah.
And the weird thing was they always had games that required a lot of quick thinking and precision, like racing games, fighting games, stuff like that, and they just didn't really work.
Right.
So I
You would
tried it
think
out
like
for a while and
like
just...
a less demanding game or something like would kind of lighten the load, but a lot of these like 2D pixel art style games still require like an absurd amount of precision and stuff. It's
Yeah.
just, like, I don't
So
know.
like things like puzzle games and things like that, where you can just slow down, and it's nothing twitchy about these games. They work fine on it, but they were few and far between, to be honest. Bearing in mind that I used it when it first came out, but I understood that they have added downloadable games to PS
Yes.
now, which... Yeah, they've got quite a few on there. They've got a couple of, maybe like over 100 games, I think, on there.
Damn.
So yeah, I was looking through there, and I thought, well, let's pick out what I've missed over the PS4 period. And one of them was the Medieval Remaster.
Ooh, I played that.
Hell yeah. So I'm also on a bit of a platinum trophy kick at the moment as well. So I'm trying to platinum most games that I'm playing.
Right.
and Medieval, I think it said it was only like 6 hours long, and the game's only about 4 hours long anyway. So I thought, that's probably a good one to concentrate on to platinum. But yeah, the game itself, it looks really nice. Looks very, very nice indeed. It's they've done a really good job in porting over the old PS1 classic. To the PS4,
and it's a remake, so it's like every level is
total remake,
the same as it was on PS1. But it does look really, really good.
It looks amazing. It was quite refreshing to play it actually, because a lot of those games from the PS1 period, like sort of, I don't know, those types of action adventure kind of games, they were very, very linear. They were kind of all collectathons. It was like every single game, 3D game like that, had to be a collectathon and things like that. And while this is to some extent, it's more focused on the puzzles and combat, which makes it a bit more. It gives it a bit more substance, than some of the games that were out during the time. I used to love it as a kid. I used to love playing it. It's a very cool little action adventure. The main character, Daniel Fortescue. He's fantastic. The whole story of it is when he was a human, he fought this big battle against the villain of the game, and they charge into battle, and he gets an arrow through the eye and basically dies in the first charge. And then the villain wins that war, I believe, and then decides to get into some necromancy to raise the undead and bolster his army. But obviously Daniel Fortescue, our hero, was dead as well, so he wakes up. But his character design is so good. I just love Daniel Fortescue. He's got like this weird shaped head anyway, which is like kind of like Hey Arnold-esque. But obviously because he had decomposed, let's say, he's got no bottom jaw. So when he's talking, he's just and he's just great. He's got these big, long, gangly legs. Like his character design is great, and the whole art style of the game is really good as well. It sort of takes me back. They did really well to capture that in the remaster.
Yeah, I love his character design. Actually, do you remember the Super Smash Bros. For PlayStation? It was called PlayStation All Stars, and it had it was literally just Super Smash Bros. But PlayStation characters. The most surprising character in that game for me was Sir Daniel. He was actually he was actually in there, and he was really fun to play as too. But his design is iconic, even if the game's not maybe as, I don't know if it's like as well known as a lot of the other like big PlayStation hits. Obviously, it's big enough for him to be included in that, and for them to remake the game. But I feel like not as many people played Medieval as I expected.
Yeah, I think it was quite a popular game where I was from. Maybe it was more well known in the PAL regions.
Maybe.
But I remember he was he was not too far behind Crash Bandicoot in terms of a mascot over here anyway. So yeah, and I think he got a couple of games as well. I remember playing Medieval 2 much more than the original Medieval. But the game itself, it's like I said, it's level based. But it's got a bit more to it. It's not quite linear. You revisit levels again and with new equipment, and you can get further into the levels and whatnot. The combat in it is still absolute arse, which is a shame. What that game needs. So basically, it's this game is just press square to use your basic attack, and press circle to use your sort of special attack. Luckily, it's got a big range of weapons, which when you get the later weapons, they are much better, but only because they actually kill the enemies very, very quickly. But the fact that the combat has no lock on, so basically you're trying to turn Daniel in this way to try and swipe at oncoming threats. Very organically, is just, oh man, it feels so bad, and you're gonna get hit. You're gonna get hit a lot in this game, and luckily you can get upgrades to your health and things like that, which makes it not so bad.
Yeah, but those checkpoints are like so few and far between. A lot of times you end up just restarting the level, and on top of that, like, it actually makes it almost like, it's not a roguelike game, but like the fact that that if you die you're gonna lose so much progress in whatever level you're playing, it makes it very intense. At least I remember like on the edge of my seat playing through it most of the time.
And this is strange as well because the levels range from like 2 minutes long to maybe 10 minutes long. So if you, and I did it a few times, I died at the end of a 10-minute long level and I was just like, oh, do I really want to do all that again? But yeah, it's a fun game. It is medieval from the past. They have added a few things called Lost Souls, which to be honest, even though it's nice that they've added this new collectible, if you like. So basically, once you beat the game, you unlock these lost souls, so you can go back into previous levels. You find the lost soul, then you need to go into another level to lay it to rest. And it gives you a little riddle, so it doesn't tell you exactly where to go, but it might say something like, something to do with elephants, and then you think, oh, okay, I remember in the hedge maze that there was a giant elephant, so maybe it's there. So you go there and see if you can lay the soul to rest there. And they actually give you a little kind of, sometimes a mini game, or like a little combat situation or a little puzzle or something like that to lay the soul to rest. And that's all well and good, but the problem is with it is that if you pick up a soul in the level, so say in a 10-minute level I find the lost soul in the first 2 minutes, you have to complete the level to actually tell the game that you've actually collected this collectible.
Right.
And that's like the worst thing ever. It's like, oh my god, just let me pick up something and then just quit out to the map to go and find it. The fun is in solving this riddle, not actually
going
and some of these levels
again.
The thing is, in every single level as well, there's two things that you have to do, right? So picking up the lost soul and then returning a soul from another level to that level. So if you've got a 10-minute long level, you've done it once during your full playthrough of the game, then you're doing it again to find the lost soul, then you're doing it again to revisit that level to lay another lost soul to rest. So I was just like, oh my god, doing those 10-minute levels, and some of the levels are pretty taxing. They're okay to go through once, they're not good to go through 3 times.
No.
And it was a bit of a but the cool thing is that if you get them all, there's 19 of them in total, you get the PS1 version in the remaster. So I wanted to do that.
Yeah, I was in the same boat as you. When I found out that was the ultimate unlock for laying all the lost souls to rest, you get to re-experience the original game. Now, did you do them? Did you get them all and lay them all to rest?
Yeah, I got them all. Yeah, got them all.
Did you replay the PS1 version of Medieval?
I didn't replay it.
Oh man!
When you say replay, do you mean did
just
you
try
have
it
a
out?
Go of it?
Try it out.
Yeah, I tried it out. Yeah, I tried it out. But yeah, it's hilarious.
It's like night and day. It's crazy. It's really.
It's crazy with those remakes, right? Because you have this image in your head of what a game used to look like, and I know that we used to play them on CRT television, so they looked a bit better because of that. The jagginess of the polygons were not so, let's say, noticeable on a CRT television. But you have this image in your head of what a game used to look like, and then when you actually go back and play it, you're like, this isn't what I remember.
Yeah,
but it was, and especially after you played a remake of that game, I couldn't even believe the difference in the design of the character.
Yeah,
so in the remaster, I don't know, like Daniel looks like what I remember him as, but he's totally different to the original PS1 Daniel in terms of his proportions, and I was just like, this is so weird.
It's really weird.
It's weird, yeah, how the mind plays tricks on you,
I would like to see more of that, though. Like, obviously, it's not going to work with every single game that gets remade, but the fact that they even, included the original version of the game within the remake was like really just amazing to me. And that being the reward, it pushed me to play the remake more than I would have, because like you said, like going through the levels once is fine and fun, and some of them are pretty annoying, and after beating them you're like, oof, I really don't want to do that again, but you're forced to do the whole level again for the Lost Soul. But you just constantly have that, like, but then I can revisit the PS1 version of Medieval if I do this, and that's just like the perfect carrot on a string to keep you going. It's great.
And it's nice as well, because that collectible is a new thing that these developers of the remake have added in as an extra, which I think this remaster does everything right. It makes the game look so much better. It's kind of on the balance between making the game feel like it used to, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And, improving it a little bit in terms of performance. But also adding in new stuff, and then adding the original game in it as well. I mean, it's like the package of what other developers of remakes, if they're planning to do remakes, need to aspire to, I think.
Yeah, I would have loved to. I mean, just imagine you beat Demon Souls, and then it's like you unlock the PS3 version of Demon Souls at the end, just to see it.
I think it's like amazing. I don't know. I feel like it's a bit close together, those, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those releases are a bit close together.
It's
and
not
I feel like
quite the same as seeing a PS1 version of a game next to a brand shiny spanking new one.
I mean, you're adding 100 megabytes to your file size if you add in the original PS1 Medieval, but I think adding the whole PS3 version of Dark Souls would probably add 10 gigabytes or whatever to the probably more. To the game. But yeah, it was fun to go through a childhood classic. I was kind of, in some ways, very much impressed about how it held up and how it was very innovative for its time for a little action adventure. But also, I remember what we had to go through in the PS1 when they were still trying to get used to 3D.
Cool. What would you rate the overall experience if we were gonna go for like a, because you beat it, so if you were gonna go from like a 0 to 5, how much did you enjoy it?
I hate number ratings.
All right, okay.
I would say that if you want to just get the nostalgia, just play through it once. If you're really adamant about going for the Lost Souls and getting the original PS1 release, which is a nice reward, it's gonna grate on you before you get there. So
that's
I don't think it's enough to spoil your thoughts on the game or whatever.
No.
But I think if you play it through once, you'll have a really good time with it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that if you played the original, you're probably gonna really appreciate the Medieval remake. But I don't know how much newcomers would really enjoy the experience. Definitely not as much, because I think some of its gameplay... I didn't even think of
newcomers.
Yeah, I think the gameplay is pretty dated. Like you said, the combat is not the best. I think you played it on PS5, right? Did it run in 60 frames? Could you tell?
I would say that it was definitely not 30.
Yeah.
I would say it was higher than 40 in 90% of the game. I think
the PS4, like if you play it on a PS4, it has like an unlocked frame rate. So it was, I played it on PS4 and it got like the frame rate was all over the place at points, but if it's an unlocked frame rate, that means on a PS5 it should just hit 60 most of the time or all the time.
You think that playing that game on a PS5 it would hit bloody 120, but I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it's
they would have to update it or something. I don't know, because I think they probably soft cap it at 60 for
It's weird though, because you nowadays, as a if you're a console gamer, we've been doing this as PC gamers for years, but you go into the options menu, right, and you have a look to see if you want performance or graphics modes and all this sort of stuff. That's like the new thing for console, for these new consoles. But it was weird going into this game because the only option they had was to lock it to 30.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh my god, we're going the other way around in this." It's like it's running at kind of 60
or locked at 30.
Yeah. And it's like just lock it to 30. I'm like, it's a weird option to have.
It is. Well, cool. I'm glad that you got to play that, and I'm glad you found all those lost souls and laid them to rest.
I did it. What have you been playing though, Plushie?
So lately, I had the first game I want to talk about here, right? After hearing such good things about it from the one and only Donnie Banch, right? I decided to get Tales of Arise and start playing that. And I am not too well versed on the Tales games. I've played one Tales game in the past that was Berseria, and I thought it was an okay game, but I've heard really good things about this one. So I booted it up, and yeah, I can confirm that it is definitely a good, cozy, comfy JRPG experience. Maybe not as cozy as something like Dragon Quest XI, but it's up there. So it is. It's a really pretty looking game. It still looks like an anime JRPG, so it's got it looks very similar to Dragon Quest, or another one that pops to mind is Trials of Mana, which came out like a year or two ago now at this point. And it's got a lot of the same design sensibilities as well, where it's like, it's not open world. You have like several interconnected maps, and they're all sprinkled with like these blue little shiny spots that are like, you know, all the ores and cooking ingredients and stuff. So you'll enter a map, you pop it open, you see all the little blue shiny things on the map, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go around and collect all this stuff. I'm gonna go around and fight all the enemies. And thankfully the combat system is really, really interesting. It reminds me a little bit of
Keep talking, Plesh, 1 second.
Yeah. The combat reminds me a little bit of something like Final Fantasy XII, where, you know, you have a team of 4 in your party, and everybody has different arts, and arts are what they're called. They're basically moves, skills, spells, and you can pick and choose what you want the NPCs to use and how they use it. It's not quite as situational as Final Fantasy XII, where, like, you know, in 12 you're pretty much coding the character's behaviors, where it's like, if someone gets poisoned and their health drops beneath 70%, then use this spell.
Use antidote.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you can, you know, kind of program how your party works to an extent. But the main thing is that each face button, so you got triangle, square, and X, right? On PlayStation 5 is where I'm playing this. You can assign a different move, basically, and you're kind of experimenting to see what moves combo into other moves. Your basic attack button is on R1 in this game, which is a little weird, and the dodge is on trigger, which I don't know what the deal is with trigger dodges in games nowadays, but apparently
horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently that's the new thing. So that's a little weird. You actually can't switch the controls either in Tales of Arise, so like I can't switch the R2 dodge to like L1 or something like that, which whatever, so I'm just dealing with it. But yeah, a lot of the fun comes in experimenting with your move sets and the new moves that you unlock, finding out what moves are going to break through enemy defenses. They do kind of have like a stagger system similar to Final Fantasy 15 and 7, where, you know, you get a combo going long enough, you're going to stagger the enemy, then you can like pop them up into the air and get your air combos as well. That's another thing too, is there's different moves for whether you're on the ground or in the air. So square on the ground might be one move, but you take your combo up into the air, and now square is something else entirely. So yeah, it's a very deep combat system, actually deep enough to the point where you have the ability, just like in Final Fantasy VII, to on the fly switch between any of your party members right in the middle of a combat situation. And on top of that, you can even open up your menu and unassign like if square is a certain move and it's not working against whatever enemy you're fighting, you can actually go in and switch it on the fly. Like, this move's not working right now, I'm going to put another move on square and then jump right back into the battle. But the characters all, even though the controls stay the same, their move sets and kind of how you play with them are all so different from each other that I'm less inclined to switch between them, which is a little weird, right? Like, I definitely should be experimenting with all 4 of them and just learning how they all play, but I'm now, like, so comfortable with just the main character that when I switch to someone else, I have no idea what I'm doing with them. So I need to take some time to go through each character and kind of figure out exactly what all their moves do and how they play. But even though I'm only playing as one character most of the time, the AI for the other characters is perfect. You know, like you can go in and tweak certain things. Again, you can make them be less aggressive, or focus more on healing and stuff like that. But just having them all on kind of default settings, they kind of all hold their own and know, you know, what to use and when. So that to me speaks a lot about the game, where even in Final Fantasy VII, there'd be times where I'm like, Barrett, no, what are you doing? I don't want you to be, you know, like, you're supposed to be healing me right now, or whatever. Or Donald, you know, Kingdom Hearts. He's always doing the opposite of what you want him to do, where in this Tales game, I rarely ever have that problem.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's very important for games like that as well, isn't it? And I've heard that this Raph has said Tales games have such good combat systems, but I've heard a lot about this one, Tales of Arise, being like the sort of the best combat system that they've had so far. So a lot of people seem to have been really getting into this one.
Yeah, it's deep, but also at the same time not quite as deep as the previous ones, where it's more approachable, I guess, easier to learn. The other one that I played, Berseria, had kind of like each, depending on what kind of combo you were going for, you could have like multiple combos set up. I don't know. It's hard to explain, where like I could have, okay, if I do square, square, triangle, like the first square is this move, the second square is this move, and then triangle is like, you know, a third move. Whereas triangle, square, square, you could have a completely different move from your last square, square, triangle. You see, I'm already like getting confused trying to explain it. This one is much more just, you set the moves and you go.
Yeah.
Some moves might not work, but you can just pause the battle and switch it out on the fly. The story is, you know, like, there's not a lot in it that is very different from other JRPGs, where it's kind of like, the setting is really cool. They're kind of going on the Final Fantasy 13 thing, where there's 2 planets basically within the same gravity field, I guess, and you know, you have like all the high class people on one, and they've kind of taken over the other one. So it's a bit of a story about rebellion, but also you know, questionable motives, and the characters are more interesting to me than maybe something like Bravely Default 2, which is definitely more about the combat than the story. It's got like, you know, Bravely Default 2 has like the most stock JRPG story that you can possibly have, whereas this one is pretty stock. Like, again, it reminds me a lot of Final Fantasy 13 meets Final Fantasy 12. Lots of castles and a nice blend, actually, of sci-fi and fantasy, which I always appreciate. I feel like a lot of JRPGs like do a pretty good job of mixing the 2 genres. And I kind of lean more I lean a little more sci-fi personally. Like, I'm more into sci-fi stories than fantasy stories. So it's cool to see kind of like the hybrid of the two. But yeah, everything about it has been very comfy, very cozy. It's definitely grindy, which is actually surprising to me. I thought that this game would be a little more streamlined. Like, a lot about it is streamlined. Its story is streamlined. Its combat is more streamlined compared to other entries in the series. But yeah, it's been a good experience so far. I've probably I'm probably only like a quarter of the way through the game, if that. But you know how JRPGs are. You get 40 hours in, and then it's like, guess what? There's another 40 hours. You thought you collected all 5 crystals? Well, there's 3 more things that you need to go around and get.
Well, yeah, they love doing that. I mean, it's great if you're a kid, right? And you have a whole summer to play it. But when you're older, it's like, oh dear. There's been 14 new games that have released since I started this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with it too. Again, like I said, I've been playing like a couple different games at once. But when you're getting really into an RPG like that, you wanna keep up with it. Otherwise, you have that problem where you come back, 2 weeks later and I don't remember what I was doing in this.
Yeah, JRPGs are the worst for that. They're the longest games, and they're the ones that you can't take breaks from as well, which sucks. But if you're in the mood for it, you just have to go for it, And I think you can't go very wrong with Tales of Arise, according to critics and other people that have played it that I know.
Yeah, this Bandai, this team from Bandai Namco, they put out more misses for me than hits. Like I know, like they've had in the last few years Code Vein, and Scarlet Nexus, and a couple others, but like they just don't quite. I don't know. It's almost like Tales is their main thing, and so they go all in on their Tales games, and you can tell. So yeah, I've been enjoying it. And I'm going to keep playing it, and I'll kind of give you my thoughts on it again once I finish it. Give you like a more full review of it.
See if that JRPG story actually ends well.
Yeah.
Holds up right to the end.
I'm curious to see, too, like like every boss battle in this game. I think I do a good job, like, grinding and doing all the side quests that I can before moving to the next area. I'm one of those kind of people that needs to do all this stuff before I go to the next place. Otherwise, who knows if I'm ever gonna do it. But every boss battle I get to, I get by the hair, like just like a hair. It's like either everyone is dead and I have one person standing with like 25 HP and they just pull through, or like I've gone through my entire item pool trying to keep everyone alive, and I'm like, Jesus, I thought that I was like high enough level for this, if not above level for this, but no, the bosses come along and just stomp you. So I'm hoping that, by the end of the game I'm a little bit above the boss level cap, and because man, the final bosses in any JRPG, the difficulty just spikes to the heavens, and
unless it's Final Fantasy VII, then it goes down towards the end.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, they really do, and I think I'm proud of you for sticking through it.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Yeah, there's. Even if I'm really enjoying a JRPG, it's very rare that I get to the end of them nowadays.
Me too. Me too.
I'm hoping that you get there.
Yeah, or a lot of times I'll get to the final boss and I'm almost like, I've come this far. It would be a shame to quit now, but I kind of can't be bothered by it. I've done that with Final Fantasy 12. I got to the final boss and I was just like, I can't program my characters to do the right things, and I just never beat it.
There was an early course in logic and coding that game, I swear.
Yeah.
It was. But I loved that.
Like a Dragon as well. I got to the very final boss in Like a Dragon, and I did all the side quests and all the the arenas and stuff in Like a Dragon, and I still got to the last boss, and it was taking me like, I think I was in that fight for like 45 minutes and then died, and I
Yeah.
was like, nope, I can't, not right now, nope, nope, nope. But yeah, hopefully we can get all the way through it. We'll see how it goes. But what else you been playing this week? Anything else?
Well, I don't know if you can consider this a JRPG, but it is kind of. In Persona 5 Strikers. So this game was on PS Plus as their free game for January, or one of the free games anyway. And I was a big fan of Persona 5. Persona is a game about a bunch of Japanese high school kids who
Did you
basically...
beat Persona 5? Just out of
No, I
curiosity?
didn't. No, I didn't.
Okay.
But yeah, I know why you're saying that, because this is a sequel.
No, actually, I was saying it because that's another one where I actually beat Persona 5. That's like, it's very rare that I beat a JRPG, but that was one of the few I beat. But yeah, even still, like, that game, when the final few bosses in that game are like, what am I doing to myself? So I was curious if you experienced that pain as well.
No, I mean, I experienced a lot of pain in that game because it is very difficult.
Yeah.
But I really, really liked Persona 5. Unfortunately, I did make the mistake of stepping away from it for a long time.
Ooh, yeah.
And then I was really, really screwed then. So, and then, yeah, I was a good fair chunk, maybe 25 hours or something into the game. And it was like, yeah, I don't really want to restart this now as well.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I saw this one come out, and as you know, I am a big fan of Dynasty Warriors style games.
Muso games, yes.
Yeah, Muso games. So it's a bit of a guilty pleasure for me because I know that they're repetitive. I know a lot of people think that they're garbage. I know a lot of people really do hate the Dynasty Warriors games or Musu games in general. But I think that I've seen them really improve in recent years. So the Hyrule Warriors, for example, that was a great Muso game.
That's might be the best Muso game.
Yeah, and they added a lot to it. It was a very traditional Muso game, but with lots of additional mechanics to it, which made it you had to think on your feet a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Easy Game X agrees with me in the chat that Dynasty Warriors is awesome, so I'm glad about that. Thank you, Easy. But yeah, it added a lot of stuff in Hyrule Warriors, which like elevated that genre. And I kind of hope that they do that with Dynasty Warriors. I haven't played one for a very long time, but I love them nonetheless. So when I found out about Persona teaming up with them to do a game, I was like, is this just going to be a Muso game just with Persona characters in the palaces as battlegrounds?
That's what's so great about Muso games, right? Is because it's such a simple concept that they can kind of take any franchise and make a Muso game out of it, and the fans of the franchise, it's like playing with action figures. When we were kids, it's like, I know for me, they have the Pirate Warriors series, and I'm a massive One Piece fan. So now I can play a One Piece game where it's pretty much just, I pick any of my favorite characters from One Piece and just demolish hundreds and hundreds of enemies with them using all their cool moves and stuff. And you can supplant that into like any anime, any cartoon, any other video game
show,
series, But yeah, Persona is a weird one it surprised me, certainly.
Well, I was very confused when I first heard about it, because I was like, is this just going to be a Dynasty Warriors game with Persona characters, with the palaces as the battlegrounds and whatnot? I thought it would be kind of cool, a bit of the Persona style and flair on it, and I wasn't really sure what to expect at all, because I didn't, even though it came out in 2020, I think. I never really looked into it to see what it was all.
I think it came out 2021 or maybe 2020 in Japan. You might be right.
Oh,
about
2021 actually, yeah, because I'm still bloody thinking that it's 2021.
that.
We're 2022 now. I need to get that into my head. You know when you're like, at school when it was like a new year and you used to have to put the date in the margin of your workbooks or whatever, and like even nowadays, when I've got my like diary for work, it's like when I write in the date, it's like it's going to take me so long to get from 21 to 22 putting that in there. But anyway, yeah, so I thought, well, I may as well. I really like Persona 5. I really like Dynasty Warriors and Musou games. So I thought I can't go wrong with this game. And I will say that this is not a Musou game.
No, it is.
This is a Persona 5 game.
This is very much like the most like un-Musou game that there is. I also played this game as well. I actually bought this game when it came out because again, Persona 5 is one of my favorite JRPGs probably of all time, and if I got to spend more time with these characters on another adventure, and again, like a big appeal is that they keep a lot of the sensibilities of Persona 5's combat system and they just supplant it now into real time. It's
well,
almost...
yeah, that's the thing about it really, is that everything that you knew about Persona in terms of the personas, the structure of it, it's a Persona 5 game, and like you said, it changes up the combat to be more action like instead of turn based like it was in the original Persona 5. And each character, obviously you've got your big crew of characters which retain from Persona 5. And I was, like I said, Musou games are basically big battlefields with thousands of enemies on screen and thousands of allies on screen, and these huge battles where you just mow through thousands and thousands of people, per mission. But with this one, it is completely a Persona game until you actually get into a battle, and it's exactly the same in terms of you can see the enemies on the map, if you like, and you can ambush them, right? Or they can see you, or you can just get into a normal fight. And then once you do get into a normal fight, you may only be fighting 3 to 10 enemies in like an action RPG kind of way, or a Musou type of way. So each character has their own quirks. It's all about pressing square and triangle in various combinations to do attacks, basic attacks. But again, like Persona 5, you need to use your personas, special powers, magic, if you like, to find the weak spots in the enemies and basically stagger them again, like you were talking about earlier with Tales of Arise. It's got a stagger system in it,
right?
Before you can do more and more damage. But it's really strange because the Musou tech, if you like, they pride themselves on having hundreds of enemies on screen at once that you can just mow through.
Yeah.
But this one, they kind of tease you in the beginning of the game where they put just hundreds of basic enemies in the middle of this city battleground that you're in, and you're just mowing through them like there's no tomorrow with various combinations of square and triangle. But once you actually get into the game, which is structured like it was before, where you go into, say, a palace, if you like, you find the perpetrator, the villain of that palace, you beat them in a boss fight, and then you go on to the next one. But when you actually get into battles in the overworld map, it's most of the time it's only 3 to 10 enemies that you're fighting with. And once you learn what type of enemies that they are, you find its weakness, you use magic to exploit that weakness, and then that opens them up to a bit of a battering with square and triangle. But it's really good. I still really like it. I'm glad that they went over to the Persona side more than the Musou side, to be honest.
It adds a lot of depth because again, Persona almost has like this Pokemon like system to it where, okay, I need a persona that has fire abilities. So you're gonna go to find where that guy spawns, fight him a bunch of times until his mask drops. All right, now I can use him, but I confuse him with another persona to make an even stronger persona, and then inherit these certain abilities. So it definitely is more all Persona than Muso.
It's got all of those systems that you remember from Persona 5. So the way that you can fuse personas together to get new ones.
Yep.
The way that you even down to the point where you register personas and level them up using persona points and all this sort of stuff. It's all there. It's all there, and it's more of a sequel than I thought it was going to be.
Right. Yeah, so speaking of that, by the way, obviously one of the things that makes Persona is its story. So what do you think of the story of Persona 5 Strikers?
Well, I think that's where it kind of falls down a little bit because, again, I wasn't expecting a JRPG length story going into this game. And the story revolves around basically what they did in Persona 5. So there's a bit more nuance to it that I won't spoil here. Right. But basically, somebody's bad. These kids have special powers. They can basically go into their mind palace, or jails, they're called in this game. And basically, they can change their heart. It's called changing their heart. So, for example, there was a guy exploiting a social network to make everybody love him and buy his books. He was an author, and basically people were doing anything to get their hands on these books and turning normal people into absolute savages. So you go into his mind palace, you find out where his shadow is, which is his big boss, and you fight it, and then basically the guy in the real world, then the villain in the real world, will know the error of their ways and own up to it. So that's the whole thing. Like, if you know about Persona 5, you'll know what I'm getting at.
Right.
But yeah, and I think I said this to you before, but they very much front load, or it seems to be that they're front loading all of this. It seems to me that they're just going from jail to jail. This is a new villain now that you've got.
It's like a monster of the week style thing in the beginning.
Yeah. So this is what they've done. You know the story beats as they come up. So this person's bad. Investigate why they're bad. Do they have a jail? Yeah, they have a jail. Go in there, fight their shadow. You come out of it, and then they're all happy again. And well, they're not happy, but they realize the error of their ways, and then and that's what it's been like so far. There is stuff in the background, but I'm not sure I'm that interested in it compared to what I was like with Persona 5. The good thing about Persona 5 was that you had this whole system in the background where kind of by night you were fighting people in their jails and trying to change somebody's heart, but by day you were a normal student in a school, and you had to do your things like your lessons and your social things,
like
your training, your
time management game as much as it is a JRPG.
So it was I mean, that had a bit more to it as well. And I think every time that you completed a palace in Persona 5, you would get a new character as well, which was quite exciting for a JRPG because you have a whole new character. They have their own persona. They have their own kinds of elemental attacks, if you like, which can help you find weaknesses in your enemies and whatnot. It's turn-based style JRPG, but in this one you have everybody from the start. The characters that you remember from Persona 5. It's basically a road trip story sort of thing. And I think there is an overarching plot in the background, but I mean, you can spend, if you go through every single dialogue screen for a certain story beat,
it's going to take you 100 hours to beat the game.
you could be sat there between actually having to do something, actually playing the Muso part of the game, for 20 minutes, half an hour maybe.
Yeah.
And and a lot of the time, I know JRPGs are much beloved by people, and I love JRPGs as well.
Mm.
But they just sometimes they go on and on and on about
yeah.
stuff that you already know. It's like I think Japanese developers treat you like it's your first time playing a game, like any video game. Every single every single JRPG.
Yeah.
So they're like, or they assume that you're, I don't know, taking an extended leave away from the game, and you're coming back after. So it's like, it's like this girl in the game. She's using her fashion label and all this sort of stuff as a big sort of ruse to entice people in and make people fall in love with her and all this sort of stuff. And at every opportunity, they were like, remember, she's bad because she does this with her fashion label, and she does this and that and this. And then it's like, what's going to happen next, because they need to find out where her jail is in the real world to actually go and fight her boss. And it's like, what should we do next? Oh, remember last time we went to her jail. We tried to find out the place where. Oh, it's like, oh, come on, like treat me like I've got a brain, game. So I've been skipping through a lot of the dialogue. If as soon as the dialogue goes to a bit where it's patronizing me, I'm like, skip.
No.
But the fighting is really fun in it. It is a Musu game. The best parts of it is when there are a lot of enemies on screen, but they're very few and far between. The boss fights are okay. I mean, they don't have anything special. They just seem to be getting more bullet spongy as I go along.
Yeah, they get pretty spongy.
So they're all right. I've had my ass kicked quite a few times as well, because I've had the wrong composition of team. Because every single person has their own personas with their own element that you need to exploit. So you kind of need to go into the boss first. I mean, for example, I was in an ice area, and I thought that the boss would be ice, weakness to fire.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that at all. They were weak to curse and nuclear or something.
Yeah.
So it's
again,
like, right, okay.
Kind of like different for a Muso game, where a Muso game you can have a boss battle, but again, you're more focused. You're not thinking about like party composition and who has what element and stuff when you're playing a Muso game. No, this is
like I said, this is not a Muso game, and it's the only thing that's similar is that sometimes they've got a lot of enemies on screen, and it
just has Muso
action
mechanics in it. It's got the combat system is mostly press square and triangle, but there's so much nuance and depth in this one that even compared to something like Hyrule Warriors, like this is just a lot deeper of a combat system.
If you're like me, and you're a fan of Muso games, and you're a fan of having these massive sprawling battlefields, and going around just absolutely pressing square, triangle on every person you see, and just watching them fly away and watching that kill counter in the corner go up. This is not that game. This is Persona 5 with for some reason, I thought that they would have gone with a team that maybe did a bit more with their combat, like, in terms of their development, their mechanics and things. I don't know why they went with the Dynasty Warriors guys. Maybe they saw the success of Hyrule Warriors, but it's such a different game that I honestly think that their involvement, Koei Tecmo, isn't it?
Yeah.
Koei Tecmo. I'm sure their involvement was very minimal. And it doesn't really lend itself very well to the Muso franchise in terms of how each individual character plays. So like in Muso games, each character has a kind of a gimmick to them.
Right.
Whether it's like their weapon, what kind of combos that they have to use, whether you have to hold down triangle at the end of a combo, or whether you don't, you have to mash it or whatever. It's not too complicated. But in this one, every single character is so different. Well, they try and make out that they're so different in terms of, right, here's a tutorial how to play this character. But what you're really doing is trying to find the weakness in the enemies, using the right person that can exploit that weakness. And then when they're down, press square, triangle, square, triangle, square, triangle. It's not... They're not getting everything out of Koei Tecmo that they should, really.
Right.
Rafa says maybe Platinum Games. Yeah, exactly. If they got Platinum, to do it,
that'd be a whole other thing. That would be because Platinum has nailed, I think, fast-paced combo-based combat. But even still with Platinum, like they don't have this kind of this thing that Persona has, where it's like you can equip like the Pokemon element of it, where you can have so many different options and stuff like that. But I feel like a platinum version of a Persona 5 game would be pretty awesome, though. They usually do pretty well with whatever they're making.
I think this game it's good. It's still good. It's a Persona game. It's got everything you want in terms of finding personas, making personas. It's the actual getting around the world and the actual fighting and things like that. It sounds like I'm pretty down on it, but I'm not really. It's just like I can't really understand why this game was made, but I'm kind of glad at the same time. I just think it could have been better if they got somebody with more focused mechanics, that
moment
that
to moment, it's very fun. It's very engaging. I will say that I didn't finish it because, just as we were talking about before, it is more JRPG than Muso, and when you step away from a JRPG after a certain amount of time, you kind of come back to it and you have no clue what you were up to or what you were thinking when you last played, and that happened to me with Persona 5 Strikers. So I don't have much of the game left. I plan on finishing it at some point, but it's going to be one of those things where I have to get reacquainted with it. But overall, like I was really surprised by it. Again, I bought it just kind of being a fan and not expecting much, except that I just wanted to kill, hundreds of people with these characters that I like a lot. And then when I started playing it, I was like, oh, this is not what I'm going to be doing with the game, but that's okay because what they are doing here, I'm really into.
What have I got myself into here? I had the same feeling. I was like, oh God, am I ready for something like this?
Yeah. But
it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'm glad that you've been playing it. I was really surprised too that was a PlayStation Plus game. What a good grab for a PlayStation Plus game. Like, I'm
especially
very surprised by that. It's
very
fairly
recent
new.
game as well. Yeah.
And
especially with something like Persona 5, which is a very Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal, they're still quite expensive today. I think I bought Persona Royal not so long ago, which was about 25 quid or something. So it's like, the fact that they're giving that away, maybe it didn't sell as well. I don't know.
So yeah, we're almost, we are an hour in, and we haven't gotten to our main topic. I do want to touch on one more game that I've been playing this week, but I'm just gonna quickly talk about it. I haven't finished it yet. It is an indie game that I played on stream on Thursday night. It was called The Pedestrian. It's essentially a puzzle platformer, but it is definitely way more puzzle than platformer. And the kind of concept behind it is you play as a little guy who exists in a guy that you would see in like a restroom sign or a crosswalk sign, just like, a very simple looking character. And he exists in the world of signs. So you move from one sign to another, and each sign kind of has its own self-contained puzzle. A lot of it is, the puzzles are basically like make the path for yourself, and you actually have to think ahead most of the time, because you'll have multiple signs per puzzle, and you can move between them, but you're going to need to connect, exit and entry points between the signs. Once you make those connections between signs, you can't disconnect them, otherwise it will reset the puzzle. So I can't go through one door into another sign and then take that same connection and put it to another door to kind of like make things easier for myself. No, I need to plan out my path like pretty heavily before actually trying to solve the puzzle. And it really, really charming game. It's pretty. It's a 3D game. Like the world itself is 3D. There's things that are happening all around these signs, and you're moving through a city. You're going through like a subway station. You end up at a university, and a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background. But the gameplay itself is all 2D because it's playing out on a flat sign. So it reminds me of a cross between something like, I don't know, like it's got this Portal kind of feel to it.
It kind of reminded me of those very very innovative like flash games, the puzzle flash games that you used to get before. Obviously the graphics and things don't suggest it being
it's a
flash game at all. It's really good looking, but it's like kind of like, everybody that made a flash game, their first flash game would be like, let's do a puzzle. It's got to be a puzzle platformer,
right.
And it's kind of like one of those, but it seems way more involved, interesting, unique.
Right. You've only got a couple basic mechanics that your character can do. I mean, you can only really jump. You can hold on to and move things around within the signs, certain items, and then you have that ability that kind of disconnects you from the character and takes you away from the sign so that you can make connections between them all and stuff. But these indie puzzle games have been on a roll lately. I feel there's been quite a few that I've played that really just use their mechanics in really innovative ways. And between like the Pedestrian and Superliminal, things like that, I've been pretty impressed with these indie puzzle games that have been coming out. It has a beautiful soundtrack. The soundtrack in the Pedestrian is very reminiscent of like a Pixar movie. It's got those kind of like jazzy, light jazz feels, a lot of piano, very lighthearted. So it in turn makes the whole mood of the game pretty bright and cheery. It feels good to play it. But man, oh man, towards the end of the game, where like I played through like a good majority of the game, but they really crank up the big brain expectancy on their puzzle solving, because it gets crazy. It gets to the point where you're looking at so many different signs with so many different possible connections and stuff that it gets genuinely hard. And I plan on finishing it. I don't know if I'm going to end up streaming it again or not, but it is on Game Pass and Zub. I definitely recommend you check it out, because I know you also like puzzle games, and
hell yeah,
it looks like something that you'd have a good time with. If I know, like, watching it is probably a lot more even confusing than playing it, because there's just so much on the screen, and if you don't know the basic mechanics, it's like, what am I even looking at right now? But yeah, you start it from the beginning, you're probably gonna like it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's I really do enjoy my puzzle games, like things like Baba Is You and things like that. Like really, they're just awesome. They're good little brain teasers to get through. I say little brain teasers, but Baba Is You. But I think it would be a cool topic of discussion one day, is to talk about innovation and things in innovation in puzzle games, because I've played some which absolutely have blown my mind. You got your portals and things like that, but I mean, I was telling you about that Portal mod that was made and released officially on Steam. And I can't remember what it's called now, but basically they add a third portal. Yeah, and you're probably thinking, how the hell do they do that? But the third portal makes you go forward and back in time as well.
Right.
So obviously in Portal, you've got just go in one portal, you come out the other, and momentum is conserved. But oh my god, adding time into it as well, where whatever you do in the past reflects itself in the future, but whatever you do in the future doesn't reflect itself in the past. So oh my god, it's just mind-boggling. It's just absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, it seems like be a cool topic, some of the most innovative games are puzzle games, and the way that they expect you to use your own brain to solve what we've given you. How come like we give you like a small little pool of mechanics, but you can do so many different things with these few things.
Have you played Steven's Sausage Roll?
I have not. No. That sounds.
That is probably the biggest big brain boy game I've ever played in my life.
Oh wow!
Like I got stuck in the tutorial of this Portal mod, right? Because it was so hard, right? Because of the amount of things that you have to think in multiple dimensions and everything. This one, I managed to complete one level, and that was it.
Wow!
Steven's Sausage Roll.
I'll
Honestly,
have to check that out.
Oh my god, it is. All you have to do is just roll around sausages on an island, and make sure that you cook them evenly.
Okay.
So it's kind of grid based, and you're pushing along the sausage, and then you've got little areas with fires on them, basically barbecues, and you push it on. The sausage takes up 2 spaces, but if you roll the sausage on, then it cooks it perfectly for the first roll onto it. Only on one side of the sausage as well, and then if you roll it back onto that perfectly cooked size, it burns the sausage, and then you've got a burnt sausage. You have to start the level again.
That sounds.
Oh my god,
that sounds rough.
It is really rough, but you can do things where you can stick your fork into the sausage and move it around in sort of like an orthogonal directions,
Right, okay.
And also you can kind of twist the sausages around as well if you it's all about the position of your character, the fork, the sausage, the barbecues. Oh my god.
Damn.
Steven's Sausage Roll, it's called. If anybody can complete level 2 of Steven's Sausage Roll without looking up a guide, then you're a big brain IQ boy. 200. Yeah.
Hell yeah. But that was the Pedestrian. I haven't finished it yet. I don't know if there is like some sort of story that it is kind of telling. It doesn't seem like it. It seems like this little character is just trying to get somewhere, but I don't know where or why. Rafa says the end of the game is very interesting, so I'm gonna have to beat it. I got stuck on a puzzle, but again, I was live playing it, and I think with a game like that, you want to kind of
pressure.
There's a lot of pressure, so you want to just be able to take your time and take all the time you
puzzle
need
games
to solve a puzzle.
Puzzle games are quite hard to stream, aren't they? It's like you either, people are with you from the start, and if they kind of miss anything, then they kind of, they lose a sense of where you are and what you're doing.
Right.
Or you get people that are like, absolutely love the game and just tell you the solutions anyway, and it's like pointless. So it's like,
right.
Yeah.
It's rough.
It's difficult genre to stream, I think.
They are fun though. I do love them. It's just, it's nice to have a game to tease your brain every now and then like that. So our main topic for today is roguelikes, right? Because me and you both play a lot of roguelikes. And
my favorite genre.
It's one of my favorite genres. I have trouble because obviously roguelike games are pretty difficult experiences if you're trying to see yourself through to the quote unquote end. They're more about kind of repetition and like a prolonged gameplay experience over time, not necessarily during one play session. And because of that, there's not as many that I've seen all the way through to the end, but there are some that come along and just consume all my time. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about roguelikes.
Yeah, I think we'll be discussing a little bit about the difference between roguelikes and roguelites.
Right.
What a roguelike is to us, why we like them, and then I think we'll go through some of the games we have played, and what the future is for this genre as well. What we would like to see, what maybe something improve to it if we're big brained enough. But what I am going to do is, Plushie, if you want to keep talking,
sure,
is that I've got to go for a wee. I'm sorry.
Sure, go right ahead. Let me throw on the.
But yeah,
the
I shall
screen.
be back in 2 minutes.
No problem.
So I'll see you in a bit.
Cool. Let's see here. Where's our BRB? There we go. But yeah, so roguelike games. Obviously, if there are, we have a little list of games that we're going to be talking about, but I am curious to know you guys in chat, since we have a couple minutes here to interact with each other. What are some of your favorite roguelikes? Or are you even into the genre at all? Welcome on in, Ratchet. Hello, Happy. And Rafa, I know you like some roguelike games. Easy, you as well. I know a certain roguelike game that you've been playing recently. Taya, I know that you do not like roguelike games. You are the Metroidvania player. It's hard for me to pick a specific favorite roguelike game too. But Rafa likes Hades, 20XX, and 30XX. And 20XX and 30XX are interesting to me. I've never played either one, but they are... Oh, Children of Morta totally falls in this category. Absolutely. Actually, I forgot to put that one down, but that's a great roguelike game. I'll definitely bring that up in a few minutes. We're going to talk about Hades, but 20XX and 30XX, I've never played either of them, but they are Mega Man roguelike games. So, take all the mechanics of a Mega Man game and kind of throw in the RNG that comes with a roguelike. And I mean, that sounds pretty cool. 20XX is a couple years old at this point, and 30XX is the sequel that I believe is still in early access. Dead Cells is a game that we'll talk a little bit about, as well as Rogue Legacy, which there's certain things that Rogue Legacy does that I like a lot that I'm going to touch on. So cool. It looks like we have a lot of like-minded individuals who like a lot of the same roguelikes that we'll be touching on today. And there is a certain roguelike game that I've really been playing a lot lately that I'll talk about too. Has anyone actually ever played the game Rogue, which is where this genre even stems from? I've never played Rogue, personally. I don't know if Zub has, but Zub played another game fairly recently that was really, really similar to Rogue. Obviously, too, I know that there are Roguelikes and Roguelites, but I think the one that that we lean more towards is Roguelite, Lite. But for me, I just kind of classify everything as a roguelike. But we'll talk a little bit about those nuances and whatnot.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Welcome back.
I'm back.
He's back.
I just heard you mention Children of Morta, and I was like, I can't believe I didn't bloody consider
I know,
that
me
one.
either. I know.
Me and Happy Hippo loved that.
Yeah, that's a really good game that I am going to bring that up once we get into our individual game topics, because there are some things in Children of Morta that I like a lot. So what is Rogue to start off with? Because Rogue is the game that started all of this. So we've got to talk about it. I've never played it. Have you ever played it?
I have, yeah. And Rogue was a game which was a bit of a revelation, and it's kind of kicked off its own genre. It took many years to kick off its own genre, it seems, but it was a dungeon crawler, procedurally generated dungeon. So every time that you would die or start up the game, you would play in a totally different randomized dungeon with randomized enemy placements, randomized item placements. The whole thing about Rogue was it was a very calculating game where every time that you move, the enemies would move. So it wasn't real time in any sense. But again, it had your typical tropes of trying to find weapons, armor, potions, gold around the dungeon and fighting enemies, and trying to get lower and lower in the into the dungeon before you beat a final boss. I never actually got that far, so I assume that there's some sort of end to it.
Right.
But that's the whole premise behind Rogue, really, is the fact that it's procedurally generated, it's permadeath. Every time that you die, you lose basically all progress in the game. There's no persistent upgrades or anything like that. It's that is the game. But the appeal of it was that basically, instead of having your finely tuned crafted dungeons, which obviously many games before it came out like that, it was kind of a way to have infinite fun with this kind of game. If you like these kind of games, then you have infinite you can basically have infinite fun with it, because every time you play it's different.
Right. That's kind of the main selling point of a rogue game is every time you play it, it's going to be something new, which I think most rogue likes and lights do pretty well. But you know, there's still amounts of repetition in each one. So it really depends whether you like the genre or not.
Yeah.
You know,
you got the same mechanics and things like that. There's in a roguelike, there's no persistent upgrades. So the only thing, so for example, you would have potions within within every run, but you didn't know what the potions did. So you could either throw the potions at an enemy, or you could drink the potions yourself. But it's a potluck, basically. You don't know if a red potion one run is going to heal your health, or if it's going to poison you, or if it's going to set you on fire.
Right.
And that was the whole thing to it as well. So every time that you would start a new game, all of the potions would be randomized again. You'd have to basically discover what certain items do every single time that you play it.
Yeah.
And this is we've said the terms roguelike and roguelite very many times during this thing, but the differences between them is roguelikes are basically what it says on the tin. So
just like rogue. So you're gonna have enemies that move when you move. You're gonna have no persistent upgrades between death, and yeah, you're not gonna know things like what each potion does and stuff between each run. To me, I think the main thing, like the big main thing, is actually the movement through the dungeon, where it's like anytime you move, an enemy is gonna move as well.
So it's more tactical. And it's so if a modern roguelike would be something like the Mystery Dungeon games, the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, which is exactly like that. It's a randomized dungeon. The enemies move when you move. There's a lot of randomization to the items and things that you can find during a run, if you like. So that would be probably the more modern take of it.
Yes.
If you go onto Steam and you type in roguelike, you're kind of going to get a mishmash of everything. But there are a lot of indie roguelikes on there with, for example, Dungeons of Dreadmore, I think is one, which is very, very roguelikey. I've got one on my phone called Pixel Dungeon, which is a roguelike, which, again, is, the enemies only move when you move. What establishes a roguelite is the fact that they've taken some elements of a roguelike or from Rogue, and they've put it into potentially another genre or, another game. So, for example, you can have a roguelite, which is a first-person shooter, for example, or you can have one which is a side-scrolling action game or a 3D
pretty much
action
most
game,
of the rogue, what I say is a roguelike. Pretty much most of these games on this list that we're going to be talking about are roguelite.
Yeah.
But to me, I mean, unless you're like a really, really hardcore fan, I'm just gonna call them all roguelikes. But I'm
a roguelite kind of guy.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's this is quite a hot topic in the gaming community, if you like. And I was like, at first I was very much of the opinion that it doesn't matter what you call it, okay? You know, it's like, is it a roguelike? Is it a roguelite? And then somebody came up with a very good analogy because, like, there's a big following for roguelike games. And then suddenly, all of these other games that were getting bundled in as a roguelike, they weren't roguelikes to them.
Right.
So they said a very, very good analogy. They said that what if you had a city builder, if you really like the city builder genre, but then people started including in city builder genres any game that where you can make a persistent change on the world. And then suddenly people start putting Zelda in there. People start putting, you know, things like these action adventure games where Dark Cloud, you know, they start putting these kind of games in there. And then you're like, no, but these aren't city builders, you know. So you need to have
Dark Cloud is a city builder game.
Yeah, but if you think about what traditionally a city builder game is, you know, you think of Sim City, you think of City Skylines. If you start getting Dark Cloud in there, which does have a bit of a case, you know, but it's mostly RPG.
Yeah.
But then
I'm just pulling your leg.
Yeah, but like that's what the analogy is, right? So that people who are very much fans of this genre and only want to see games of this genre suddenly are flooded with other games that, you know, aren't relevant to them at all. That's what happened with the roguelike and roguelites. There was a very big community of people that liked the game Rogue and liked games based on the game Rogue. And then suddenly the Binding of Isaac gets put in there. Spelunky gets put in there. Hades gets put in there.
It's just so rare that you see an actual roguelike come along and like get the same kind of recognition. Like I know lately I watched you play a game called Crown Trick, which, you know, was actually like a traditional roguelike, but it you know, it didn't really like catch my attention that much. I know another one that's been blowing up recently is called Stone Shard. Have you ever heard of that game?
No.
Yeah, I know that one is like, I see it on Twitch all the time, but it really leans heavily into, you know, the traditional roguelike thing, you know, gameplay mechanics. So it's weird. It's like likes are definitely a more niche genre, the traditional roguelikes, and roguelites come along and kind of like take the spotlight. And because, you know, the differences between them, they're pretty much two completely different things, but the names are so similar that
it is, and I understand why they had to do it, because it's taken elements of Rogue, and you've still got to have the word rogue in there, and they've tried to do a play on words with like, you know, and it's so close to each other.
Yeah.
But it's like Taya says in the chat now, this is also a huge problem in the Metroidvania community. A lot of things are labeled as such nowadays that doesn't really fit. Exactly. Yeah. So that is the problem, in that, you know, imagine if with the Metroidvania community that suddenly Spelunky was getting put in there because it was a 2D side scroller that looked a bit Metroidy or whatever, you know. It's like suddenly your favorite genre is just absolutely saturated with games that aren't Metroidvanias to you, you know.
Right.
So I think it is important to distinguish them, because the roguelike community is very adamant, very passionate, and very even though they're quite a lot smaller than, let's say, the people that like roguelites, but they're obviously sick of rogue or things being labeled as roguelikes when they're not roguelikes at all.
Yeah. So, and again, a roguelite game is going to take basically the procedurally generated areas and the permadeath, but you can still have persistent upgrades between deaths, so it kind of makes it easier on the player. And then they can basically take those mechanics and just use it in any other genre and just slap rogue on there. I know, I know, like Tay just said, like roguelikes and Metroidvanias, they kind of contradict each other, which I completely agree with, and yet we still have these games that are considered roguelike Metroidvanias. The example used is Dead Cells, which we're going to talk about Dead Cells soon.
We are,
But the example I'm going to bring up is Sundered, because Sundered that's how it kind of advertises itself, and then you start playing it and you're like, this this
This
doesn't
was
really
not-
have
yeah,
any like roguelike elements to it. It is very much a Metroidvania game, and the randomization of whatever is random in it is so barely there that it kind of like
Yeah.
drags the game down a little bit. I almost wish it was just a Metroidvania.
It's crazy. It's crazy that both of these games that we're talking about are marketed as roguelike Metroidvanias, where one, like Dead Cells that Taya is talking about, is a roguelike. I would not say it's a Metroidvania. I wouldn't put a Metroidvania anywhere near it because of the problems that we just discussed.
Yeah.
And Sundered is very much a Metroidvania. Like, if I bought Sundered because I was expecting a roguelike, you know, and I really like Sundered anyway because I like Metroidvanias, but if I bought it thinking that it was a roguelike, I'd be like, well, shit, this is not a roguelike at all. I was in the mood for a roguelike and I've got a Metroidvania, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think people, you know, like people say it's not such a big issue about what a genre is or what it's called or how people actually find these games in their particular genre, but it is really important to actually, you know,
you should
say it as it is, not
Yeah.
to mislead people, you know.
Yeah, you should at least like, know in your own mind that there are actual differences between certain genres, whether it's roguelike, roguelite, Metroidvania. There are things that make these games what they are, what genre they are.
Because if it's me, if you said to me, oh, there's a cool roguelike, my mind automatically goes to
Rogue,
you know, like, and I'm like, okay, I'm not super big on those kind of games. I do like them, but you know, I'm not in the mood for that right now.
But I don't ever
roguelite,
hear someone say that to me, like, oh, I just started playing this crazy roguelite game. I've never heard that. Anyone that is
really,
ever yeah, I always hear, I mean, like, oh yeah, I started playing this awesome roguelike game, and I never hear like, and then I'll look at it and be like, oh, this is a roguelite, but I'm not gonna be the guy
but
that
my mind
actually,
No, but my mind immediately goes to a game like Rogue.
Well,
like
so does
Crown Trick.
mine. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but then I know that people might be using the wrong term as well. So like, I do go and check it out or whatever. But that's the problem, right? Is that
Yeah.
I'm not super hardcore into the genre where it's like all I play is roguelites or roguelites or whatever. Where like I understand people's nuance in language, but it's the problem that if my mind is immediately going to this certain type of game, then the people that are actually super invested in the genre is super confusing, because then companies market their games as a roguelike, and then people might buy it and then find out that it's not a roguelike at all. It's something like The Binding of Isaac, or it's Hades or something like that. Where it sounds like I'm on team roguelike here, but my my favorite genre is roguelite.
Light. So we have a little list of all different kinds of roguelike and roguelite games.
Why do you like roguelites then?
Why do I like
first? Why do you like them?
They, why do I like them? Because a lot of times they cause me frustration and pain, but
they do, yeah.
But you know what? There's something like I have friends that were into the genre kind of before I was, and there is something like very like appealing to finding your roguelike or roguelite. So it was like, ooh, this is an interesting concept. It has like a lot of mechanics that I like a lot. The game, all right, so I have a friend who, the first, I think, roguelite game that I've ever like really seen someone get really, really into was Rogue Legacy. Okay, and it had a lot of things in it that I like a lot, which are like each character, when you would get a new character in Rogue Legacy, you were essentially getting the next member of like of
your family,
of the family name, And so you'd get a different name, and then they'd have all these like specific character traits that kind of gets you like attached to the character. So you might have a character who is dyslexic, and then all the dialogue and all the signs and stuff in the games, everything is like all misspelled, and it's like that is so charming and appealing to me. But then I started playing the game, and I was like, this is way too fucking hard. Like,
it's so hard. Yeah,
I had a really hard time with Rogue Legacy, and it kind of scared me away after a little while. I do own it. I think I have it on PlayStation. They may have given it away for free at one point. But yeah, when you find one that works for you, suddenly you get so into it. You know, you want to learn all about all its little secrets and mechanics. You know, you want to see the whole arsenal of weapons. You want to see what crazy new weird enemies are going to show up in places that they shouldn't be. You know, I think, what was the first one that like really sunk its teeth into me? It may have actually been Dead Cells, but when you find one that works for you and it clicks, it's just so easy to just dive into it and get consumed by it. Basically, it's like me right now with Spelunky. I am just so into Spelunky right now, where I have put aside so many other games just to beat my face into Spelunky over and over again and fail.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and you fail so quickly in Spelunky that it is disheartening, but something about it just makes me want to master it, you know? But in general, that was what initially got me into it. I saw my friend and how deep he got into Rogue Legacy, and I kind of wanted my own personal roguelike to get as into. And then suddenly I was playing all the roguelikes, trying to find the one that worked for me. And then I found out, wait a minute, I like this whole genre. There are a lot of roguelikes, roguelites, that really work for me. So that was my experience. What about you? What got you into roguelikes?
Well, two games I really liked as a kid was the original Legend of Zelda, and my favorite thing about that game was the dungeons. And I really liked Smash TV. Right, okay. So I had this game on a collection on one of the PlayStations. I can't remember what it was, but it had Smash TV on it, and I absolutely love Smash TV. And I remember thinking when I was playing Zelda that I just want more of the dungeons. Like, I would love, like, if one day there's going to be, you know, like, I thought of it as discs sent to you in the post, like every month or something, like, you know, the magazines that you could buy with demo discs, you know, if I could put something into my, like, you know, PlayStation or Nintendo or whatever, and it just like gives me more of the dungeons, you know, more of the dungeons, so I can just, you know, so I'm not playing the same ones over and over again. And then Binding of Isaac came out, and it had the overarching mechanics of a Zelda dungeon, so sort of like the 4 doors in the northeast, southwest of each room, you know, had keys, bombs, hearts, and it had the twin stick shooter kind of style of Smash TV.
Right.
And obviously mixed with it being a roguelite, in the fact that every time that you played it, it was a different level, you know, it was a totally new dungeon. And as soon as that game came out, I was just hooked immediately. I was just like, oh my God, like I am dying in the first, second, third room, you know, that I go into. But it's like, I've got to keep going. I got to like push myself. And then as I got further into it, I sort of got all the way to the mum boss fight, beat her, then found out that, you know, new things have been unlocked in the dungeon. New pathways have been unlocked in the dungeon. And it just kept going. No matter how good I thought I was at the game, every time I got good enough to actually get to the final boss, it would just add more to the game, and it was just like, oh, you think you're good, are you? Well, here we go. Here's the what was it? The uterus level. Here's the church level. Here's the chest level. His hell. His whatever. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ! I was like, this game is just blowing my mind, and I just love the chaos of it. I just love the fact that every time that you start up that game, you do not know what you're getting yourself into. You know, it's like if I have my favorite game, like whether it's a Metroidvania or something like Zelda or whatever, the enjoyment I get out of that is the fact that I know it so well. I can get around the map. You know what I mean? Like, it's a linear experience. Even open world games are linear experiences, if you like, because even though you can go to each area of the map and do quests out of order or whatever, they're still the same quests, right?
Right.
Unless you count Radiant quests in bloody Skyrim, but they're fucking awful. So yeah, like the fact that I had this game now, I had that like epiphany in my head where I was like, this is like unlimited fun. This is unlimited fun. I'm gonna learn everything about this game, as well as it being mysterious in the fact that you pick up items and you didn't know what they did and you had to kind of work it out for yourself, which I don't like that nowadays, but I really liked it back then.
Isaac
but yeah,
really it really came out and kind of took the crown for like the ultimate roguelite experience, where it has a huge following. They the developer has added so much to the game over time, where even what was it, last year was another expansion, like another new expansion had just come out, added
which
a whole bunch of new stuff.
It added so much that it just boggled my mind. It was a totally new game. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But the reason why I like roguelikes, and I think Binding of Isaac shows this really well, is the fact that it's so chaotic. I like chaos in my games. I don't like order. I do like games like Uncharted and Tomb Raider. I think things like that, which are linear experiences, but they have their place, right? They have their place where you play through them and you have a really good experience, and that's it. Even with Metroidvanias and things like that, it's like if you restart a Metroidvania, you're doing the same thing again. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But the chaotic aspect of roguelikes, in the fact that every time you turn it on, you're gonna interact with or deal with something totally new, is just incredible to me. And I think Bind of Isaac does it really well, because it's got that mix of, you have some roguelike games which you're kind of forced into a build, and if you don't get that build, then you run over. Yeah, and that's not fun, because it's like it's just random. Then it's like, oh, did I beat the RNG this round? Yeah. Or you can go totally the other way, where it's just total chaos, where I might pick up something that is really good and then really crap, and then I have like just an average run, or I can just, the game is just against me, where I'm just getting all random crap shit. Yeah. But Bind of Isaac, I think, really does well in that, in terms of, I can go into the first item room, I can pick up a Guppy item, for example, and if you get 3 Guppy items, then you turn into Guppy, and he's got really good mechanics, and really, really powerful mechanics. So it's like, okay, I got a Guppy item really early on in the run, so now I can kind of focus on trying to get more Guppy items. Well, where do Guppy items spawn? Well, they spawn in the deal with the devil room, so I can't get hit. I really need to focus on not getting hit. They also spawn in the curse room, so I need to make sure every single curse room that I see, even though it damages me to go inside there, I need to go in there.
Isaac does that really well, because if you go into Isaac with a certain goal in mind, that kind of keeps you flowing along. Like, I know when you're trying to unlock new characters in Isaac, you might need to do something like get a certain amount of coins, within the first 3 floors, or don't take hits within, the first 3 floors. And when you kind of have those goals set for you, it actually gives a little more order to at least what you're trying to do in a particular run. So it's pretty focused in that area. But Isaac does so many things well, where one of my favorite things in Isaac is the way that the pickups physically deform your character and change the character throughout a run. So, you know, you start off just looking like normal, and then by the end of it, you're just this hideous monstrosity, all these things that you've picked up just visible on your character. That's always been kind of the most, I don't know, like, just fun thing about Isaac to me.
Your character at the end of a run can look absolutely horrendous. He can have like warts and things coming out of his head. He can have spider sacks coming out of the other side of his head. He can have devil horns and devil feet, and oh my god, it's just incredible. But also another thing that Binding of Isaac as well, and I'm using Binding of Isaac as like a general example of what to do well. I've totally forgotten what I was going to say.
He brain farted.
No, in terms, I brain farted for a second. But persistent upgrades, right? So Binding of Isaac doesn't have any traditional persistent upgrades per se, but you've got a range of persistent upgrades, right? You've got on the left, which is like no persistent upgrades whatsoever, like Rogue.
Right.
But then you've got on the other side, which I'd say Children of Morta is like that, where you're basically, it's kind of RPG style, where the more you play the game, you level up your character and then your stats go up.
Yeah.
Which, you know, like on the one side, on the Rogue side, I know that it's all about, you know, learning the mechanics and getting better naturally, organically.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I tend towards that end with roguelikes, because that's the best kind of progression for me. I don't want to see a number go up. But then the Children of Morta side, even though I love Children of Morta,
everything is persistent.
I mean, everything is persistent, right? So it feels a bit like you're kind of you're doomed to fail in your first sort of run through, because it's like, dude, like, you know, you're not kind of the right level to fight this last boss, and it's like, well, you know, fuck me, I suppose. But yeah, the middle ground in Isaac is the fact that they have no persistent upgrades, but whenever you do something good in the game for the first time, so beat a boss, find a secret, you know, all these kind of things, you unlock a new item that just gets put into the random item pool for your runs.
Right.
So it can show up in future runs, but it might not, you know. But usually these items are of a higher caliber than the ones that you start off with. So it's kind of an upgrade. You are kind of saturating your item pool at the same time, so it's kind of a downgrade as well. You know,
it's the same thing with the characters. You get multiple characters to pick between in Isaac, but they all kind of have things that they do well, and they also have their downsides. But usually, most of the time, any of them are better than just picking Isaac, right? Who's just like a baseline.
Well, until you get the special item for Isaac, but like you said, there's some enemies where you want to, some characters where you want to take damage. You know, like Samson, he gets stronger the more he gets hit, and Eve, when she's on low health, she turns into the whore of Babylon, where she just becomes an absolute powerhouse. But you know, then you've got Isaac, that's an all-rounder. You've got ones that have high luck. You know, if you've got high luck, then you can explore
you could argue that those characters in and of themselves are persistent upgrades, right? Like,
well, not really, because any character you unlock isn't necessarily better than Isaac.
Okay.
It's more, okay, I'm going to play Isaac today. I really want to get a build where, you know, I'm a glass cannon, right? I want to do that. Well, I'm going to play as Eve then, because I can't get hit too much, but I'm going to be doing so much damage that it's unlikely I'm going to get hit. You know, I just want a bit of a vanilla experience, see what happens. I'll just play as Isaac, you know?
Right.
It's more like that. I wouldn't say that that's a persistent upgrade. I'd say that the item unlocks are a persistent upgrade, but a very, very middle ground kind of upgrade.
So I think Isaac is kind of the crown jewel, if you will, of the roguelite genre.
For me, yeah. It's one of my favorite games ever.
But I would say, like, just in general too, like, maybe like Isaac is not my favorite roguelite. I do enjoy the game, but it's not the one that I'm gonna pick over, you know, certain other ones. But I think in general,
how dare you, sir?
Well, it kind of ignited this whole fascination with the genre. It's kind of one of the first ones to come along and do everything right and really capture the kind of, the hive mind, the
Well, I
everyone.
know the developer said that, he'd been developing games for years. He's the guy that did Super Meat Boy as well,
Yeah.
which did very well on Xbox Live Arcade during the Summer of Arcade promotion thing years ago now. But he said that Binding of Isaac was his runaway success. It just exploded, and it wasn't really something. It was kind of a side project for him that he was working on with somebody else.
Okay.
And then it just exploded in popularity, which just it's turned into this big phenomenon now with multiple DLCs. I mean, I've got some merchandise and more board games coming in the post soon. I don't know why I looked over my shoulder as if the
but that's what I
postman was
mean.
standing right behind me.
It is kind of the like. It is kind of the crown jewel, like of the genre, if you will. It's got just
it
such
definitely
a huge...
popularized it,
yeah. But there is another game that I think also really contributed to the kind of fascination with rogue style games, and that is Spelunky. All right, Spelunky is another early roguelite game, of course, because it's a roguelite game. The upgrades, I don't know. I mean, there's not really persistent upgrades. You can get shortcuts. You can get different characters, but all the different characters play exactly the same. But it's not a game where it's not tactical in the sense that when you move, an enemy moves, so you have to plan ahead. It is tactical, and you do kind of have to plan ahead,
but it's all real time, right?
But it is all in real time, and I guess that makes it a roguelite game. So when Spelunky first came out, it was that also... And no, that was later than Xbox 360, right?
No, the original was Spelunky HD, which was a very, very old version of Spelunky.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a Flash game, I believe. I think.
Yeah, so it was a Flash game, so it's another one that kind of got in early before the genre like really started to explode. And when I first played it, I was just like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to play a game like this. But recently I started playing Spelunky 2, and I have to say that I'm addicted to it. I love it. What about you? So what's your experience with Spelunky? What is it that you like about Spelunky, and why do you think that Spelunky, much like Isaac, kind of rose the ranks of the roguelike genre and made it the kind of crown jewel that it is today?
Yeah, Spelunky. I was very big on Spelunky 1. Spelunky 2, I'm playing pretty much, I'd say, for the first time. I did play a little bit of it, but for the first time properly at the same time as you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite interesting to see us both struggle insanely with this game
in tandem.
It's nice to have somebody's shoulder to cry on who knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, I mean, Spelunky is just, if you imagine these spectrums that I was talking about in terms of like absolute chaos, like Spelunky's got so much chaos. It's got It's got no persistent upgrades, really. I mean, I know it's got shortcuts, so you can start from, say, World 2, 3, 4 when you unlock them, but nobody really considers that a Spelunky run. People consider a Spelunky run from the start to the finish, Like, that's what people consider a Spelunky run. There's no shame in just getting through it, using the shortcuts if that's what your progression wants to be. But the big progression in it is natural progression in you just getting better at the game.
Yeah.
And I like that. Spelunky wears its heart on its sleeve, and it's just like, dude, like, you think you're hard enough? Come play this game. And we're getting through it. I was quite good at Spelunky 1, but that's just because I put so much time into it that I just, if I was still bad at it by that point, something would be wrong with me. But yeah, I mean, Spelunky 2 just has this chaotic nature to it. You even though you have health in the game, and a lot of things just take down your health by 1 or 2 every time. There's things that can absolutely just insta kill you if you take a wrong turn. it's the ultimate game of patience, I believe,
Mm.
where if you really take your time and plan out your next move, and bearing in mind it's a 2D side scroller, so you can sort of duck down and have a little look below you or look up, so you can kind of plan your route. But if you just get slightly impatient and just think, oh, I'll just jump down here, it'll be fine, you could just turn yourself, a chain reaction of absolute hell for you.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the game is that how organically everything kind of interacts with each other. So, I mean, you could look below you and see a caveman walking around, right? And you could throw like a pebble down there, and he might get spooked and run and then trip over the pebble and then, like knock out himself. And if he hits someone else on the way down, they might get knocked out too. And or there are parts where maybe you might drop a little further than you intended to, and then you get knocked out, which in turn sets off this whole chain reaction of enemies running all over the place, and like you just die instantly. Like it's so easy for your run to be taken out of your hands by the game just being the game.
I mean, literally this morning I tried to throw a bomb at an enemy. I misjudged it, hit another enemy, which bounced off a wall and hit me, which knocked me out. I fell down a hole. I then fell into the path of a boxing glove machine thing that pops out whenever you get close to it. That hit me into a shop where I hit the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper got pissed off at me and shot me with a shotgun, and I died. No. And I was like, there's nothing I can do. Like, literally, as soon as I chucked that bomb, I just made this terrible chain reaction of hell for me. And I was just sat there and I was laughing my head off.
Quinn, so you can get these little, so you can get like per run upgrades, I guess, kind of. Like, you can find these coffins, and if you open the coffin, there's a little caveman in it that'll pop out and will kind of stick around with you. And it's almost like it's just they have an NPC computer AI turned up to 9 instead of 10, so it's like really, really good at the game, but not
a pro player.
Good enough. It'll still make mistakes. So I had 2 of these guys that I had saved, and they were just, they run around and they kill everything for you, and then they'll also pick up anything that they come in contact with. Well, I was going down the map, and I passed by a shop, and the 2 guys were following me, but they went into the shop. I was like below the shop, and they couldn't get to me, so they went into the shop and grabbed items from out of the shop, which caused the shopkeeper, to go crazy. But they killed the shopkeeper. They killed him. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, one of them died in the process, but the other one killed the shopkeeper. So now I've got the whole shop, at my disposal. But that, in turn, now makes it anytime I come across a shop for the rest of the run, I'm being called a vandal. And he just instantly, tries to shoot me with his shotgun, and there goes the run, But the game just comes to life. It
really does.
It does its own
horrible
thing,
ways.
in horrible ways. But I find it to be just so, like, it's so excruciating, but so charming at the same time that right now, anyway, I can't stop playing it. I'm in love with it. And I've only gotten... I've only unlocked 1 shortcut, and I just started being able to get to the next world. So I've just learned World 2 enough to feel confident. And there's 2 World 2s as well, so you can pick.
Yeah, it splits out, which is weird.
Yeah, so there's a lot to Spelunky 2. Again, obviously, I've never played Spelunky 1, so I don't know a lot of the differences between the 2 games. But it seems like this one is really deep and really, really, really up my alley. I'm having a ball with it. I can't help but laugh.
Another little Spelunky story for you. I was playing again this morning, and there was an enemy stuck in a spider's web, but also my little dude that you were talking about, right, that you can save, he was also stuck in that web. So I thought I'll just whip through my guy and kill the enemy on the other side. And I was like, why isn't this working? I was whipping my guy like mad though, and I was like, I didn't realize, but he can get aggro towards you.
Yeah. He'll get angry if you whip him too many times.
so I like was trying to whip through him, and I was like, I can't get this enemy. I eventually got the enemy and started to walk away, and he's going mad inside this spider web, like trying to get it off him. He gets it off him, and he's just whipping my ass, right, as I'm running along this long like corridor. And he's just and I'm like, I didn't know what was going on. I was like, dude, stop.
Why are you attacking
I was like,
me?
stop. I was like, why are you attacking me? And every time he was whipping me, it was knocking me out. So like I was flying all over the map, and I was just like, and it was hilarious because I was like avoiding every single trap, just like through luck. He was just whipping me, and
That's
I was
awesome.
like going over loads of spikes and all this, but he eventually got me in the end because he was just like, God, he was out for blood, that guy.
Oh yeah, he does not like being whipped. There's only a few central mechanics in Spelunky, which is just the platforming, the jumping in itself, and the fact that you can pick things up. You know, you have certain items at your disposal, like ropes to get back up to areas that are too high to jump up, and bombs to kind of, you know, make a new path for yourself. But that main mechanic is simply just jump, and the jump mechanic is so tight too. You know, it's different from other games where you don't get a lot of. It's more of a horizontal jump. You're not going to be getting a lot of height from your jumps, and you also maintain pretty much 100% of control while you're in the air. So any little adjustment that you make mid-flight is gonna have bearing. You know, it's gonna show itself.
It's perfectly designed in the way that, like, that's the thing. For a game with so much chaos, like, and I like my chaos in my games, but like it's very rare that I think that the game has fucked me over, you know?
Oh yeah,
That the
I
game,
never think
you know,
that in Spelunky.
Yeah, it's extremely rare because I know that I have total control. The fact that I died is because I just had a brain fart and just didn't realize that something was, you know, deadly to me, or I've tried to jump down somewhere without looking, or something like that, you know? And yeah, it's so like...
Yeah, actually yesterday I remember you were in a level and there's bear traps, right? And the bear traps are insta-kills, and they're also, if they are in like a tile that has some sort of grass or overgrowth on it, it will blend into the tile completely. But every bear trap has a tiny little nugget of gold on it, which gold in Spelunky, anytime you find gold, you're finding a bar of it, or you're gonna find a pile, like a goal of bars. So I know for me, the first time I saw a nugget of gold, I was like, this is new. And I walked onto it, and I died. I just died. There goes the run. Yesterday, I don't think you even saw the gold nugget. You just walked onto a tile, and it closed on you, and it killed you. And you were kind of like, oh, well, that was unfair. And I thought of telling you, like, oh, you missed the sign, but your next run, you noticed. You were like, oh, they put a nugget of gold on the bear traps. And I was thinking to myself, like, if you had noticed the gold before, that would have been your tell, you know?
The gold was raised up, because gold nuggets you can find anywhere, right?
Right. If you blow up a tile that has gold in it, a lot of times you're going to get the nuggets as opposed to the bars. Yeah.
But then I should have known that there was a raised piece of gold above this, like, overgrowth that I could see. You know, I should have seen that. But I think you can see a couple of, like, of the teeth of the bear trap as well if you look really hard. But obviously it blends in so easily, you know, you're never going to really see it. But that just goes to show that, like, you know, in that world, okay, there's bear traps. Now I've got to switch my mind to be looking at every single floor tile. And that's what I like about every world in Spelunky, is that they've got its own hazards which you need to look out for. Yeah. You know, like, and the first world the first world is the first world. You're not getting anything else, you know, when you first start it. But it's a really good training ground for, you know,
what to expect.
This could happen to you. Yeah. Oh, look, that happened to you. Well, you need to look out for that next time. And this is how you surpass it. And if you take everything slow and learn every single danger in the game, and that's why I think shortcuts are important, so you can get there and practice very quickly. That's your progression. That's your progression in the game. And once you can chain all that together, and every hazard and how to react to it in every world, then you're going to actually be able to
do a
potentially make it.
It's a tough one. So we've covered Isaac, we've covered Spelunky. I think that those are like kind of the two crown jewels of the genre, right? And kind of the longest lasting as well. It kind of shows that a roguelike or roguelite has long standing appeal. Isaac, a little bit different. Spelunky, obviously, they came out with a whole new sequel instead of just like continuously adding to Spelunky 1, which I think is good because there is so much different. There's so many different things in Spelunky 2, I guess, as opposed to Spelunky 1, that it would probably just be way too overwhelming to add it all into one game.
I wouldn't say that. I would say Repentance, the Isaac DLC, is way much more of a game changer than Spelunky 1, Spelunky 2.
Yeah.
To be honest.
But I mean, well, I guess you're right there. Yeah, but I guess it was easy enough for Edmund McMillan to just kind of add everything into the base game. I guess what's his name? Derek Yu, I believe, is the developer of Spelunky.
That's right, yeah.
You know, I don't know what his line of thinking was making Spelunky 2 as opposed to like a DLC, but I'm kind of glad that they went that route so that I could kind of jump in as like as a fresh experience. You know, I don't have to jump into a game necessarily that's been out for 10 years already. Obviously, there's a lot of carryover. If I had played a lot of Spelunky 1, I probably would be a lot better at Spelunky 2. But I feel a little bit better jumping in.
Not in every case.
Not in every case.
Including me.
Okay, this is true.
I played a lot of Spelunky 1, and that doesn't translate into me being good at Spelunky 2 for some reason.
Well,
but then, again, it is me.
And it is its own game, too. That's another, it's not Spelunky 1. So, but those are the two main, I think, heavy hitters are Isaac and Spelunky. But there is a third heavy hitter that I think has kind of surpassed the indie scene and has entered kind of into the mainstream audience as well. So it's kind of opening up the genre to even more people that might not normally play in this genre, right? And that game is, can you guess it? It's Hades.
It's Hades.
Yep, we're gonna talk about Hades. I just like the word Spelunky. It is a good word.
Rafa's been waiting for us to talk about Hades. But Spelunky is a very, very fun word. Do you know it's actually a real word as well? If you go spelunking,
yes,
it's going like searching caves and stuff, isn't
it? Yeah. It's exploring a cave essentially.
Great word.
But yeah, Hades. This is, I think, I think quite a few people were looking forward to us kind of talking about Hades. So Hades is a game from Supergiant, a beloved indie developer, and I think they've kind of mastered their art of evolving between each one of their games, taking mechanics from one game, kind of improving on them and putting them into their next game. And yeah, so now we have Hades, which is its own kind of roguelite, much more story involved in this one. And I played it a lot, actually. I played it in early access. I played it out of early access on PC. I played it on console through Game Pass. And I've spent quite a lot of time with Hades. I enjoyed the experience quite a bit at the beginning, not so much towards the end. But what about you? What's your experience with Hades?
I love Hades. It's fantastic. Probably the best Supergiant game. which is tall order, a very tall order, because Supergiant's games are fantastic.
Yeah, they've definitely mastered their art at this point. I would say it mechanically is their best game, but that doesn't have to make it like your favorite Supergiant game. But if we're talking about like what they've learned as developers over the course of their 4 games that they've released, you can tell Hades is as of right now their kind of magnum opus, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of its writing as well, you know, like the Supergiant are very much known for their good writing in their games. That's just top notch. Mechanically, it's just great. It's just fantastic. Everything works as it should do. And yeah, in terms of the progression and the game itself, I think it provides just enough challenge to um, frustrate you a little bit, but also keep you going to the end. And yeah, there is a lot of challenge in this game.
Yeah. So Hades kind of dabbles between being a bit of a relationship simulator, and then it also has, you know, all of its rogue style mechanics. It's definitely more of a dungeon crawler style rogue. It's got the kind of isometric view that might make it, at least for me, when I first saw it on Steam, I was like, oh, this is going to be like a Diablo roguelike style game. Turns out it's not like Diablo at all. It's much more of an action game.
Yeah.
But at first glance, that's kind of what it looks like. It looks incredible.
You have the combat in it. You have a wide array of different moves which you can kind of combo together, use special variations of each move, and things like that. So it's very deep in terms of what you can do. You can do range attacks and close quarters attacks with pretty much every weapon, and there's a lot of weapons as well. Well,
yeah.
I say that there's a lot of weapons. There's about 6 or 8 weapons,
something like that, and then they all have different variations.
They're totally different. Yeah. In terms of the power-ups and upgrades that you can get as well, there's a lot specific to each weapon as well.
You also have you're trying to escape hell, by the way. In this game, you're playing as the son of Hades trying to escape hell. You can kind of befriend the different gods of Mount Olympus, and depending on, you know, your standing with them, you get different boons per run. Each god has kind of different builds that you can dive into, and on top of that, each boon can have different effects on, depending, you know, what weapon you have equipped at the time. So there is quite a bit of variation with you know, what you're taking in and what you're getting back from.
So not only can you you know, focus on a singular god to get all of their powers. Zeus, for example, has a lot of electricity-based powers. So obviously, electricity in a game like that, you'd imagine that every time that you hit an enemy, you'll bounce lightning over to other enemies. You know, you'll have bolts of lightning coming down on the battlefield, whatnot. And also that each god have their own kind of theme into how they upgrade you.
Right.
So you can inflict different status effects based on which god you're conversing with or getting upgrades from. So yeah, your whole mission is to escape from the underworld in the ancient Greek times, if you like, as Plushy said. And you go through various different randomized rooms with randomized enemy placements and randomized rewards until you get to a boss of the world, and then you fight that boss, you beat it, and then go on to the next world. And I think there's 4 worlds, isn't there? 4 worlds that you go through per run. And obviously that's what you're trying to do, is to escape hell. But the reason why I like this game so much is it reminds me a lot of The Binding of Isaac in terms of, not in terms of combat, but in terms of the builds that you can create.
Right.
I don't think it's got as much possibility to go for a certain build. You're kind of railroaded into 2 or 3 rewards per room.
Yeah.
which can either mess you up or be very good for you, depending on
What is it? Only like
whatever you need.
3 gods can appear in a run, right? So
Yeah,
once you find boons for those 3 gods, it's like, okay, these are the things that are going to be on offer this run. So this is the kind of build that I'm going to have to kind of lean towards.
Yeah. And exactly, if you because there's only 3 gods then that can appear once you've picked them, let's say, you're kind of railroaded then into that kind of direction. So and then by the end of the 4 worlds, you've collected enough rewards to probably have put a lot of let's say points or upgrade points into these 3 gods to pick what you want, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's there's a lot of variations of the way that your character can fight and its mechanics, if you like. So one being the weapon that you pick. So you're kind of left with, you can have a spear, for example, you can have a gun, you can have a shield. You know, you're already picking your kind of style for that run,
right?
And then obviously when you pick the upgrades from the various different gods, then you're kind of, okay, I really like this ranged attack on my shield, for example. I'm going to railroad myself into making this this ranged attack with my shield like really powerful. So you can kind of like set a goal for you to work towards, but you know, you might be lucky, you might not be. You might not be so lucky, which is the whole thing about roguelikes, right?
Yep. Yeah, for me, it's like the things that I really like about Hades is like the writing is incredible in it, right? Each kind of god has its own, not only just its effects or status effects that you can apply, but they have a personality that really like matches the abilities too, which is cool. Yeah. It has great music, it has great voice acting, all that good stuff. But man, this game after a while really it kind of lost all its appeal to me. Like I
think one thing to note as well about the writing, just quickly, is the fact that not only is it really, really good and you kind of get attached to all of these characters and you can piss them off as well, which kind of you know, has its own dialogue options and things, but it's the fact that the dialogue is so reactive.
It's reactive
to what you're doing,
and
so,
amazingly
for
well
example,
acted
if you
too.
Yeah, so it's reactive, right? So it's not just set scripted pieces written very well through like a linear kind of game. It's so, say if I die to a certain enemy, when I come back into Hell's sort of like office area, where it's like your hub world, if you like, you know, people will mention that, oh god, yeah, you died to that thing, oh yeah, they're horrible, they are. But they'll actually mention them by name and mention their characteristics, and then, you know, if you die to them a lot of times, then they'll say, oh man, another one of them, is it?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of, it makes their worlds, and they did this ever since Bastion. Like in Bastion, their first ever game, they had a narrator that was narrating everything you did,
right?
And say if you were fighting something, it was like the narrator would say, and our hero used his hammer to annihilate his enemies, and you're there with your hammer, like, you know, smashing all these enemies up. And then, you know, you might roll off the edge of a platform by accident, and he goes, and then the hero made a costly mistake in falling off the and you're like, whoa, this narrator is awesome. And they've carried that through into Hades as well, which just makes me like, it just makes me love it so much. Like, that reactivity makes the game feel like it's alive.
Yeah.
It's so good.
That's yeah, the writing is incredible. The way that they've implemented that reactiveness into it is great. But yeah, I after a while, this was a game that I really couldn't play anymore. I understand why it's so beloved, and I even understand why it's kind of transcended into the mainstream kind of audience, because it is just a good game. It's easy to pick up and play and get into, but it's really hard to really hard to master. There are a lot of possibilities with builds, but I don't feel like they're all viable, really. Um, and or even really all like that fun to me to play with. Like
But that's
I'll
yeah.
I'll never, you know, if I'm playing for fun, I'm never gonna pick up the gun as opposed to, you know, a weapon that I like to play as or with. You know,
Mm.
if you're going for, you know, unlocking all the stuff and doing all the things, then yeah, you're gonna play with the gun, and you're probably gonna find a build that works really well for the gun, where it's like, oh, I thought that this gun was useless, but actually I found what made it work for me, and that's great. But the fact of the matter is that the gun, for me, you know, it's just not fun to play with. So I'm never going to go out of my way to play that way. It has 4 worlds, so it takes I think it takes roughly, depending on, I mean, how good, I would say a casual playthrough, it ranges between 30 and 45 minutes to start your run and then get to Hades. And
Yeah, I'd agree
you
with
know,
that. Yeah.
which is a good length for, you know, a complete run. Out of those 4 worlds that you go through, I would say 2 of them are actually like appealing to me to play. Like every run, you're not gonna get a different world every run. Yeah, the rooms might be rearranged,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still
Yeah.
going to get the same rooms, the same 4 worlds. So you've got, you know, the starter world, which is basically just your typical dungeons. You've got a lava world that I hate, and then you get this visually interesting, very
It's
green,
kind of like Crystal
lush.
Caves, right? It's kind of that kind of look.
Yeah, it's but the enemies in this area are just like, for me, again, not fun to fight against after you're playing the game. When you're on your, you know, your 30th hour of Hades, you're going to start feeling repetition in a way that you might not with some of these other roguelike games, where you're still getting unique runs, but it's more about the kind of builds that you're making for your character rather than, you know, how the environments are arranged or what enemies you're encountering, because you're only going to encounter, you know, certain enemies in certain areas and stuff like that. You've got a couple different mini bosses that it cycles through, but you're nothing like Binding of Isaac, where you're going to have, like, who knows what boss is going to show up for this run, you know? I don't know. It's after a while, like Hades really. I thought that was gonna be, again, every time I pick up a roguelike game, it's with the intentions of like, this is gonna be my roguelike. I'm waiting for the one that, you know, I can easily spend 100 hours in and not think twice about it. And for me, Hades, it's like, I thought it was that, until I hit about 30 hours in it, and I was kind of like, all right, you know.
Did you end up beating Hades in the end?
Oh yeah, I beat him quite a
did,
few
innit?
times at this point. I guess I'm probably on. So I know to beat the game, like to reach the ending of Hades, you need to beat Hades 10 times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I've beaten him about half that. Maybe I'm at like 5 or 6 times completing like a full run. And I just have no motivation to keep doing it. It's
So you did all the heat levels and everything then as well, and upgraded
well, I did
the
heat like up to heat level 5 or 6, whatever I've been able to. So when you beat Hades, right, you unlock.
Damn, you worked through that really quick, because the last time I spoke to you about Hades, you hadn't beaten Hades.
Yeah, there was like I played Hades for probably like 20 hours before. No, more than that. Maybe closer again to 30 hours before actually beating Hades. But this was, again, like half of those hours were played in early access before Hades was even released. Like in early access, you had the first 2 worlds, and that was it. So the second 15 hours of my playthrough were the full game, and I don't think I beat Hades at all in those 15 hours. Then it got released on Game Pass, and I started a whole new playthrough on console. First time ever using a controller with the game too, and probably within 10 hours of play, I beat Hades like 5 or 6 times essentially. But again, after so when you beat Hades, you unlock your heat meter, and essentially you want to add another layer of heat each run, and it makes the game a little bit harder. Whether it's I added a modifier that gives every enemy 1 hit of damage. Like, I have to hit them once before it even starts taking down even their armor bar. Like, you can have an armor bar and a health bar, but then you can add another layer on top of the armor bar. But that's
you get a list of about 20 things.
That's just like one thing, and that's one of the things that are like least difficult. So it only adds 1 heat, whereas you can add something, that might add 5 heat, and it makes like the bosses harder or something, or adds a different phase in every boss battle. So yeah, that's the Pact of Punishment for you guys that are, want the correct terminology. But yeah, heat levels that you unlock once you beat Hades once.
So once you beat a heat level with a weapon that you've never beaten it on that heat level with before, you get various rewards, right? So you get all the boss rewards again, which makes you
be able to unlock new weapons. Yep.
You can upgrade your hub area, things like that.
Right.
Well, in terms of Hades, like, I'd have to disagree in terms of the build variety that you said. I think there is a lot of build variety. You just need to dig deeper into.
Oh, it's not that there's not I mean, you can have all kinds of builds. Like, the variety is huge, definitely. I'm not going to argue that at all. It's just the usefulness, to me anyway. There's not a lot.
Oh, sorry, that was it. It was ages ago when you said what you didn't like about it, but the usefulness of these builds, like, it's kind of got that roguelite thing, right, where some things are going to be objectively less useful in terms of nuking down enemies quicker, or survivability than other things, and it depends what you get a lot of the time, right? But I think there are many things in Hades that are very, very good, that can absolutely make you steamroll towards the end of the run, which, like, I found quite a good few of those with a couple of different weapons, and it kind of like gave me this invigoration of like, well, everything must have this, right? And one of them was the gun, right? And you said that, you didn't like the gun.
Yeah, me personally.
I
wouldn't I wouldn't go out of my way to pick the gun out of, like, if I genuinely like playing the game with the fist or the shield, and I'm a casual player, so when I boot up Hades and I want to just have a run through the game, I'm gonna.
I understand that. But the gun actually became like, because I wasn't very fond of the gun either, but I thought, well, if I'm gonna cycle through all of these heat levels with all the different guns to get all the rewards, I may as well try and use the gun. And the way that I built the gun was so satisfying. The fact that the gun is what you think the gun is, right? So you fire it in bursts, and you have to reload it, and then you've got like a lob grenade, like a noob tube grenade thing, like you get like Call of Duty sort of thing. But I made it in such a way that the gun was an absolute beast, and by the third world it was just absolutely just mowing down everything. And that's what made it very fun, is that I found an OP kind of, and this is why it's important to me in roguelikes as well. You've got to give players the ability to kind of like, if they understand the game enough, you've got to give them the ability to become OP, right? Because Bind of Isaac has that for sure. right? Where if you understand the game enough and you get a certain combination of items, it's like, oh, okay, there's a certain point where you go, right, it's run over. There's no way I can die now because
Yeah.
I'm just going to steamroll the whole thing. Hades does have that as well.
Yeah.
With quite a few of the, it's working out how to get around
There's
the
probably
game's,
a
like,
build.
systems.
There's probably a build for all of the items that if you experiment
Well, that's what I'm saying.
enough,
There's multiple, right?
yeah, that's what I mean.
Multiple.
Like if you experiment enough with any item, with
Mm-hmm.
all the possibilities of builds between all the different variations of that gun and all the different boons that you can get, like eventually
and that's
you're gonna
what's
find
fun.
something.
That's what's fun. That's what I like about Hades. That's what I really like about it. It's like, wow, this combination of boons that I've just got now is like, wow, they just go together like
Yeah.
they're perfect for each other, these boons that I've got. And sometimes you'll pick up stuff that doesn't really go with each other, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's roguelike, but that's what I really like about Hades, and the fact that the environments or enemies are kind of the same every time. I mean, I'm used to environments being the same and enemies being the same because I love Binding of Isaac, and it's exactly the same thing in Binding of Isaac. You're in the early part of the game anyway. You're basically going from basement to the next environment, the next environment, the next environment, who have all the same kind of enemies and stuff. I know there's some randomization and variations that come in later on in the game, but I'm used to that anyway, and I think it's a good thing in these kind of roguelikes because it gives you a subset of enemies in the game which you need to learn for that particular thing. A bit like Spelunky, right? In that World 2's always going to have this kind of enemy. World 3 is always going to have this kind of enemy, and you can kind of learn how to how to react and what you need going forward. The thing that would really annoy me in Hades, I think, if that they had more variation in those environments and I didn't know what I was going to come up against, that would start becoming in the too chaotic end of the scale, where it's like, well, I built my thing to have like 5 grenades coming out of it at the same time, and it's great against slow moving enemies, but oh great, I've got the fast moving enemies in World 4. Like that's annoying. It's like I need to build my character and look for stuff that's going to help me in the world ahead, and it's there's quite a lot of strategy to it, which I really like.
It's not that the it's not, again, it's not that there's not other games that like, all right, it's like you said, Spelunky. Yes, you're always gonna get the same enemies in World 2 or World 3 or whatever, but Spelunky is like every world is genuinely like interesting to me to like learn about, and like Lava World in Hades is just like not very fun to me, like in general. Like the enemies aren't particularly like interesting to fight against, and I don't enjoy every time I boot up Hades knowing like, well, I'm gonna have to go through World 2 and 3 like it's like I really like World 1 and I really like World 4, but like I've got that middle section to slog through before I get there.
I feel like you're going to get to that point with Spelunky as well. I think there's going to be a World 3 and 4 that you're not going to like.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, Spelunky World 1 almost friggin' broke me, but I'm genuinely enjoying Spelunky, which I don't know what my playtime on it is right now, but I think I can see myself playing it for quite a bit. And again, I thought Hades was going to be similar like that to me, but it just, after a while, I just lost interest in it. And I respect that for a lot of people. That is like their roguelike game, and you might think it's a perfect game, but I don't know. I don't find the enjoyment.
It's very good.
Yeah,
it's very good.
No, well, I acknowledge that it's a good game. I'm not going to say that it is a bad game, but I just don't really have fun with it. That's all.
I can't believe you, Plushie. I can't believe you've done this.
I mean, look, it's just a worse version of Diablo, okay? It's just like, right? Yeah, it's just
Oh
Diablo
dear.
with comic book graphics, dude, in Greek
Yeah,
mythology.
he knows how to rile me up. He knows how
Mhm.
to rile me up.
Riling him up. But let's talk about pretty much any other game except for Hades now.
What about the sequel to Hades that's coming? No, I'm joking. So yeah, we kind of like jumped ahead a little bit, but you have like the big hitters that were like Spelunky and Binding of Isaac, and then you had like this big slew of like indie roguelikes that came out. I mean,
Yeah.
most roguelikes are indie anyway, but it was like this huge like let's jump on the bandwagon, let's get these out because this market is there for the taking. But we had Nuclear Throne, Enter the
I've never
Gungeon.
played Nuclear Throne. I have played Enter the Gungeon. Should we?
You had like Risk of Rain and like Rogue Legacy. They all came out at like kind of the same time.
Okay.
But these games were like they just went mad on the difficulty. Like Nuclear Throne and Enter the Gungeon are so difficult. They're so difficult. And I don't know what it was about them. They didn't really grab me as much as I thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Nuclear Throne and Enter the Gungeon just seemed to me like. Well, I think if I put in the effort to actually learn these games, it would have been the same for me as like Binding of Isaac, if you like, because
Yeah.
Binding of Isaac, I would have just like absolutely. I could have quit within the first 20 minutes of it because I'm like, whoa, this is way too hard. But you kind of like you said earlier, I think you have to put in the effort to actually learn it and actually get
Right.
somewhere in it because it is going to be very, very difficult.
With any of these games, any of them.
With any of these games,
Yeah.
they are really, really difficult.
You,
and if
you need to like you need to like what you are playing. You need to like the core mechanics of the game because these games require just so much attention out of you to make any progress, like when you're playing it, whether it's like maybe when you're not playing it, thinking about like what could I have done differently, like that ended my really good run last night or something like that. For like Enter the Gungeon, that's a perfect example of a game that I played a little bit and I was overwhelmed, and like maybe I could have had like a great time with it. It's certainly a charming game, but that is a bullet hell game, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and Nuclear Throne is as well. To be honest,
right?
They're cut from the same cloth. These two games, and Enter the Gungeon had a lot of things within it as well that seemed to be kind of hidden Easter egg, hidden puzzle things that you had to do in each world to kind of give yourself the best advantage, which you kind of have to look at a guide to kind of, or like watch somebody play it for 100 hours on YouTube to kind of understand everything. But then Isaac is kind of the same, so I don't think I was ready to have a challenger for the Isaac throne when I played Enter the Gungeon.
Yeah, I went back to Enter the Gungeon because I played it a little bit when it released, and I was like, no, this isn't it. But then, it is another one of those games that are always brought up when people start talking about roguelikes, and I was like, I didn't really think it would have the lasting appeal that it apparently does. So I booted it up again with the intention of, all right, I'm going to play this for 3 hours and really, really give it a solid go. And yeah, it still beat me up so bad that I couldn't really make any progress in it whatsoever.
I think the thing that I like about roguelites is that they take those really interesting elements from Rogue and then the good ones, if you like, and they take it into every single genre. I know we haven't got one on the list, but there's been quite a few good first-person shooter roguelikes as well, which I've quite liked. Nothing that has compelled me or kind of grabbed me to the same level as Binding of Isaac, but like I think that is a huge gap in the market. Huge gap in the market. If you do a first-person shooter roguelike, you are and do it well, you are looking at a mountain of money.
Yeah.
But another genre that they've taken it into is, the deck builder genre.
Yes.
Which I love, like Slay the Spire and Monster Train. They are just like, those games are so good, man.
Yeah, I really liked Monster Train because Slay the Spire is kind of like exactly what you would expect from a deck builder roguelike, right? It's kind of just go through and win each battle and make a deck that works. But you kind of have this added objective in Monster Train where it's like protect your torch that's at the top of the train or whatever.
Yeah.
And it throws enough wrenches into the kind of formula that it just appeals to me more than so. I love Slay the Spire as well, but if I had to pick between Monster Train and Slay the Spire, I'd go with Monster Train.
Yeah. It's hard for me. It's really hard. I think I'd have to go with Slay the Spire. I think.
Yeah.
Monster Train. Yeah, Monster Train for me was kind of you kind of sort of apply this to Slay the Spire as well, but Monster Train kind of had a very established meta to beating it on higher ascension levels, which, you know, if you didn't get good rolls, then you kind of were screwed no matter what.
Yeah.
But Slay the Spire did have a bit of that as well, where I'd just say a little bit less so. I don't know. I really like both of them. I really like Monster Train. Slay the Spire and Monster Train, they're deck builders, right? And they're both in Slay the Spire. You use your cards to kill enemies. You run into encounters. You collect gold, collect items. They're very roguelikey, but it's all to do with cards.
Yeah.
The good thing about Slay the Spire and its deck builder is that you can actually, when you're fighting an enemy, you can see what the enemy is going to do.
This is true, yeah.
Which was actually put into development very late in the game's life cycle.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. But yeah, they decided to add it in very, very late into the development, which is mind-boggling to me because I couldn't imagine playing Slay the Spire without knowing what the enemy are gonna do to me.
Yeah, imagine how tough that would be.
Yeah, because you have shield cards and you have attack cards, so you know when they're going to attack you, you can shield your character up so you don't take any damage, or you know when they're going to do something like a status effect, then you can go all in with attacks. And if you didn't know what they were going to do,
it'd be a crap.
That would make the game. It would be bad. I think they actually said, the developers, that the game wouldn't have made sense if they didn't actually show you what the enemy were going to do.
Yeah.
But they're very addictive. Again, you're kind of at the mercy of what cards drop for you, but then you've also got this balancing act of, you don't want your deck to get too big because you'll never get to like
the card that you need,
the cards that you need, but then you don't want it too small because then you haven't got much options. You run out of cards and you haven't got any options. So, but yeah, again, like I think it's really interesting how
so many different genres.
Yeah, roguelite can just be established across all different genres.
Pretty much anything.
They just make
even rhythm games, right? Like we have Crypta the Necrodancer, which is much more like a roguelike than a roguelite.
Yeah, and, a roguelike with rhythm elements.
It fits perfectly into a rhythm game kind of template because everything is moving along a beat, and so you have to move along with the beat as well. And on top of that, think of where enemies are going to end up and stuff like that.
That's the hardest thing about the game, is that you're trying to keep moving to the beat, but then enemies are coming in and they have different attack patterns. They can attack in different ways.
I've only ever played the Zelda version of it. I've never played the original ones. Cadence of Hyrule. But it was it fit perfectly into like the Zelda template. It was, and again, I didn't own this game. I had a friend that owned it, and he's really good at rhythm games and he's really good at roguelike games. So I was like, oh, you should try this game out, and he got really into it at the time. But yeah, you're right. It's a roguelite can kind of fit into any genre, and we did talk a little bit before about the Metroidvania roguelite kind of juxtaposition. Like how can a roguelite also be a Metroidvania, right? And I think they're
at odds with each other, right?
The main game to pull this off is Dead Cells, And Dead Cells is, I would say, another one of the kind of crown jewels of the genre. Everyone knows the game. I think
It's great. Yeah.
most people have played it at least a little bit. Whether you like it or not is another kind of, discussion. But Dead Cells, how it kind of, the main thing with Dead Cells, right, is again the item pool, right? And even the item pool has kind of has a separation where you have permanent abilities to your body that will persist run to run, and that is what kind of qualifies it as a Metroidvania, right? Where the map design is a whole other thing. I mean, you're gonna get randomized, kind of like Returnal or something, where each area of the map has been kind of made with care, but it's just how the rooms link together that's going to kind of change from run to run. But you're gonna go through a run the first time and notice a symbol on a floor, and it's like, I don't know what that symbol is. And then maybe you get to your first mini boss and kill him, and now suddenly you've got the ability to slam down. So on your next run, now you can slam down to that spot on the floor, and who knows, you might have unlocked now a path to a whole new second world, something completely different that's going to change the run from run to run. So, and then on top of that, you've got your weapons, you've got your booby traps, and all kinds of a huge item pool to go through.
Oh hell yeah! But yeah, I think like that's what makes it close to a Metroidvania, is the fact that you get persistent gear upgrades, which let you go to different areas of the map which were blocked off to you before.
Right.
That's kind of the only thing, really, in the fact that it's again a side-scrolling hack and slash or action game.
Right.
But yeah, I think the main philosophy of it is that if it's a roguelike, it's got the the random generation, it's got the permadeath. You are straight back to the start in Dead Cells if you die, like no questions asked. Whereas Metroidvanias are much more meticulously handcrafted. It's all about the combat, the traversal, the exploration, and then going back to areas that you've been already to use your new upgrades to get a little bit further or get more upgrades.
Yeah, first and foremost, certainly with Dead Cells, I'd say is the main mechanic is its combat and how you can kind of, again, you're not going to be getting there are stats to kind of dump points into per run and stuff, but it's really mainly about what tools you're going to be using and what weapons you're going to be using that is going to change the most run to run. And also, I just gotta say this, Dead Cells has one of the most satisfying mechanics in all of games, whereas there could be an enemy in a room with a wooden door, okay? And if the enemy gets close to the door, you can then attack that door and break the door down, and the force of you breaking that door in is gonna knock the enemy out. So
it's so good, yeah.
It is so satisfying to just I don't know, get a bunch of enemies kind of close to a door and just kick it down, and suddenly you're just plowing through anyone.
It's a good tactic, isn't it?
It is.
Like
it's a great tactic.
The enemies are on a patrol path right across this 2D background, and then if you're standing behind the door, you can wait for the enemies to come right near to the door, and then boom. It's so satisfying, and then they're stunned, then, aren't they? So you can just get free hits in on the enemies. But Dead Cells is just fantastic. But I reckon it is it's an example of a roguelike.
It is a roguelike. It is not a Metroidvania. It is a roguelike through and through. It has certain, again, I would say the only real thing it pulls from the Metroidvania is that unlocking new permanent abilities to give you new access to areas that you couldn't access before. You're not going to be, when you go from World 1 to World 2, there's no way to go back to World 1. You're not going to be going back and forth and backtracking and stuff like that. It is very much just like a straight shot to the end, and depending on what you pick up, that's what's going to change from run to run. But I do think that it's worth trying out. I think it's probably one of my favorite roguelikes. That's one of the first ones that really sat well with me, that I dumped a lot of hours into. We've got a couple more on our list. I noticed someone in chat brought up third-person roguelikes. It was Tretin, which I feel like there aren't like a ton of third-person roguelikes. He mentioned...
No, I think we've been talking about Returnal, right? And obviously the fact that it's a AAA roguelike, which is rare as well. But yeah, you're right. There's not many, even kind of 3D, fully 3D roguelikes. Unless you're talking about some of the very niche first-person shooter ones that you have.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I didn't really get into Risk of Rain 2.
That was the game you brought up. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, Risk of
I didn't
Rain
play
2,
it either. Yeah. I also didn't play the first Risk of Rain. That's one that you mentioned earlier, and that game just kind of slipped by me when it first came out.
That was a 2D one as well, so it was very strange that they went for 3D for Risk of Rain 2. But I didn't really give Risk of Rain 2 much of a chance. I have watched Tretin play it quite a bit. But yeah, I don't know. It's again, it shows all of the tropes of a rogue light, in terms of the the placement of treasures, the wide variety of treasures that you can get. There wasn't that much in terms of randomization, which I don't think I very much liked about the game. I think the environments are pretty much the same. I think the order is just different. I can't quite remember. But yeah, I think that's the thing. It's just we need more 3D Metroidvanias.
Yeah, I would like to
I know
see
it's
more.
harder. It's a lot harder to do,
roguelikes.
right? Well, what did I say? Metroidvania?
Yeah.
I must have been looking at chat.
I've got one more game I want to bring up, at least. I think we've touched on pretty much every game in my list anyway. But there is one that we didn't talk about, and I do want to talk about it with you because it is a surprisingly mathy game. There are a lot of numbers involved with this game, okay? And I did not expect that. And that game is Noita. Noita is a 2D roguelike. No, it's a roguelite. I'm sorry. But they call it the subtitle that they've given it is the Falling Sand roguelite, and its kind of main gimmick is that much like those old Falling Sand games for iPod Touch and the first iPhones and stuff, every pixel on the screen has like a physics property associated with it. So wood pixels can catch on fire from fire pixels, which will then make smoke pixels, which eventually the wood might break away. So it might have been a container filled with water pixels. So now all the water spills out, and it's just like everything reacts with each other, which is something I like a lot in roguelike games. That's why I like Spelunky so much. Everything is so reactive. So it's kind of nice to see like a chain reaction of things happen in Noita, where it's like all I did was throw a dynamite stick, but it blew up the explosive barrel, which blew up all these stands that were holding up a minecart, which then fell onto an enemy, which then exploded into lava, and then you could just have a crazy chain reaction of things going on. But yeah,
that's why
so much math.
Didn't like Noita.
Oh yeah, it can get out of, again, there's this spectrum of like chaotic and once you start getting too far on the chaotic, and it can be plucked from your control so easily.
Imagine Noita is just on the absolute full chaos end, which just like every single one that you pick up does something different. It could be an RPG launcher, it could be a flamethrower, it could be anything. Like it's just so random. And then, like you said, everything has a physics property. So you just hit a structural weakness somewhere, and the whole bloody map comes down on your head. and I'm just like, oh no, like
interesting
I just
thing...
couldn't get into it. It was too chaotic for me.
Yeah, well, like with those wands, right? Between each level or world or whatever, you can kind of, they give you a little workshop, so you could get a wand that's a flamethrower, okay, and maybe you bought a spell that is like, I don't know, a laser. You're shooting a laser. Okay, well, I'm going to go into the workshop and I can actually take the flamethrower spell off of this wand and put it into my little inventory bank and put the laser one onto the wand instead. So, but depending on the wand's like cast rate, its mana regeneration rate, like all these numbers involved with it, that you can end up making a super OP wand that's just gonna melt everything in your path, or oh no, it turns out that my continuous laser spell, it only shoots, you know, a spurt of laser, and then it's got to recharge for 3 seconds before it shoots the next one. So it's very mathy. I have again, my friend who kind of got me into the genre of roguelikes because he's just so into them. He's also a very math oriented brain, whereas I'm more of like, you know, the what is it, like the creative side brain of reading, writing, stuff like that. I booted up Noida for him, and I was like, here, just have a go at it. And suddenly he's like crafting the perfect wand and getting really into it, and I'm like, damn, I knew you would like this, but I didn't think you would like it this much, you know. So it is definitely it's got some big brain elements to it that I found quite surprising.
I don't know, it's just like I could not get on with Noita. I think I need to probably give it another go, but
yeah,
it was just way too chaotic for me. I was just
it is very chaotic, and it's very hard as well. So, you know, it's one of the harder roguelike games, and I honestly, I've never beaten a run in Noita, although I have gotten to what I'm assuming is the final boss of a run. But man, that game, much like Spelunky, requires a lot of patience, if not more so. But then even on top of that, like, you know, it's got this whole math mechanic to it as well that adds a lot of depth.
Maybe if I got into that aspect of it, I'd probably like it more, because
I think you would.
Me,
yeah,
I'm very much like your friend in terms of left brain Enos. I like mathematics, not creative stuff.
Right.
So maybe I would. Maybe if I dove into it a bit more.
Yeah, I think that you would probably find, if you were to sit and like start picking apart the numbers between spells and wands, and once you realize, oh, I can essentially break this game open and, you know, bend it to my will, you might end up finding a new appreciation for it, an appreciation that I have, but I just can't crack through its shell to fully understand it. I find it very interesting. I think the game is hilarious and fun, but yeah, I think that if I just could kind of understand the numbers a little bit more, I would probably have a better time with that game.
Yeah, definitely. I think you know, I'm always I probably didn't give it the old roguelite try, which, you know, I believe that you have to play a roguelite for an extended period of time to actually get it and get the full experience, you know. So I don't think I gave it
even like I said, what was it? I said I was gonna give a game like 3 hours. Oh, it was Enter the Gungeon. I was like, I'm just gonna sit here for 3 hours and give Enter the Gungeon like a good solid try. Well, yeah, I did it for 3 hours, and at the end of those 3 hours, I still, you know, had decided it wasn't the game for me. But did I actually experience Enter the Gungeon? Probably not. You probably need to give it like any roguelike.
Yeah, you know yourself, like even in Enter the Gungeon, you've got that massive like room at the back of the hub area, which just has like the possibility of hundreds of items being available and hundreds of guns and things like that, which is you're gonna that's the problem with like, and with Binding of Isaac, as I said earlier, like Binding of Isaac didn't even tell you what things did half the time.
Right.
Which, with mods and the new DLCs and what they've added recently actually gives you a better idea of what stuff does. But to add that added layer of not being able to know, or not knowing at all what an item did when you picked it up, and you just had to like kind of work it out yourself, was very nice when it was first done. But when every game tries to be like that, where you need like kind of a degree in the game to like
Yeah.
to know what you're doing, it gets a bit taxing. So
Yeah.
I think we're nearly coming up to the end now, but
Yeah,
like
we are.
what you'd like to see in roguelikes going forward. And I think that's one for me, is the fact that a lot of roguelikes, they try and hide what the items do from you, because I think they're trying to copy what Binding of Isaac did.
Yeah.
And they're not really taking the best parts of that roguelike. So, for example, I played Neon Abyss recently, and that game just loves to be cryptic with its items,
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't want to have to perform or like do a 4-year degree in this game to actually, get the full like understanding out of it and work it all out. And not everything has to be a mystery,
Yeah. Well, when I played Isaac, I have it on Switch, so I don't have the ability to mod it. So pretty much any time I played Binding of Isaac, I had my phone open to the wiki, where you could just click on any item or just type in any item, and it shows you what it does.
It's like, why do that nowadays as well? Because everybody knows that a wiki is going to be produced about your game straight away, and people are just going to be on there anyway. Why have to add an extra step for people? Just tell people what the item does.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what exactly, like, I don't think I can necessarily narrow it down. Like, what would I want to see from roguelikes in the future? I think I would definitely like to see, I would like to see more 3D roguelike, or roguelites, because Returnal, I think, did a lot of things really, really well. If we start getting more, rogue style games, with like a bit of a bigger budget, maybe some of the bigger studios kind of start jumping in as well, but it also kind of worries me. It's like a roguelite fits so perfectly into the indie genre, right? It's such a good chance for a small developer to come up with something unique and actually like make a name for themselves. And also, I don't think a lot of AAA studios, like, I think that the zeitgeist, they don't like to hear, I'm losing progress in my, $60 game that I want to see through to the end.
Yeah.
That was obviously a problem with Returnal, where people were like, I just bought a brand new PS5 game. How come how come every time I die, I start at the beginning? It's like, that's the kind of game it is,
Yeah, it's like that's the problem we've got as well, is that roguelites aren't in the mainstream at all. You're not getting them. You're not stocking a roguelite on shop shelves. They're not big AAA games. So Returnal had to be that kind of guinea pig to say, guys, this kind of game exists. Do you guys like it? No, I don't like it. I spent 45 minutes trying to do this level, and I'm straight back to the start. It's like, yeah, bro.
That's
like,
how it goes.
That's how it goes. Get used to it.
Yeah. So yeah, I would like to
that's
see...
why people have a love-hate relationship with roguelites as well.
Yeah, it's understandable.
I find that you either love it, you love it, or you hate it.
Yeah. But yeah, I would like to see, again, too, like a really cool like first-person shooter roguelite style game. I know we had Into the Pit, which I thought was pretty bare bones, honestly.
It was.
We have
Tower of Guns. That was
Tower
one as
of
well.
Guns. There's also, what is it, Bullets Per Minute, which is kind of another actually mega mix of genres, where that was like a first-person shooter, roguelite, rhythm game.
Rhythm, yeah.
So like
wow,
all these things are in the mixing pot now. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the state of roguelite games right now. I think for roguelikes, like genuine roguelikes, there's not a lot of them out, and they're definitely appeal more to a hardcore niche audience, and that's going to be even harder to bring into kind of a mainstream light. But because roguelites can be anything, honestly, I'm just excited to see what developers come up
They're
with.
perfect for the indie space, aren't they?
Yeah,
And,
they really are.
I just had the best roguelite idea
Let's hear it.
ever.
Okay, let's go.
It's Burnout 3
Okay.
roguelite. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what that looks like, but somebody make it for me right now.
Well, that's like me saying I want to see a Frogger.
FIFA roguelite.
Yeah, no, I want to see a Frogger roguelite. That's what I want. Give me that game.
I don't know what it looks like. I've got these like flashes in my head of what it could look like randomized tracks, like randomized. Oh, I don't know. Permadeath, like you can't get taken out.
See,
or
the
something.
thing is with
produce
Burnout,
a design document.
You want the races or do you want like the crash mode? Because like the crash mode, I was thinking
I want
like,
everything. Can I have both, please?
So, yeah, I mean, sure. The thing with like that crash mode is like once you start the chain reaction, it's out of your hands.
Oh hell yeah!
You know?
Yeah.
So that would be
they tried to
interesting,
do that kind of with that stupid arcade version of Burnout Crash, which.
But like just a racing game in general, like I don't
that
think
was
we've
what I was
ever
coming
had
to,
like
right?
a racing style rogue game, like something in the vein of Mario Kart, but a little more long form. I also really like the the kind of mash that we got with Oregon Trail with what's it called, Death Road to Canada, where it was like Canada, a bit of a beat 'em up game, but you also got these like randomized. You're on a road trip trying to go from Florida to Canada to escape the zombie apocalypse, and along the way you would stop for supplies, and those areas would kind of serve as levels to go through, beat up zombies, pick up new items. But along the way too, you'd get these like events that would happen, and you'd have choices to make that affected the run. That was a really special game for me. A roguelike fighting game and Lemmings roguelite. Those would all be interesting. Some good interesting ideas.
I think we all don't know what these things would be. Like, I want a racing roguelite. Rafa wants a roguelike fighting game. Taya wants a Lemmings roguelite. I don't think we know what these games are going to look like, but we need them.
Someone
we need
make
them right now.
A fighting game, though, that would be interesting. Like, you have like a big pool of, let's say you play as the same fighter every time, and you have this big, huge pool of other characters that you're gonna fight against. Okay, and then every time you beat one of those characters, you can pick one of their moves to inherit as your own. So you make up your own.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you make up like your own combo and special system based on every person that you fight in the fighting game.
You know that combo list that you have in the options as well? That can be like blank at the start, except for a few basic moves, and then you can pick one of the defeated fighters' moves to put into that blank list. So you can choose which combo or combination of buttons that you want for that particular move.
Exactly.
Right,
that
we're doing
work.
it now.
We're on to something here, Rafa.
Copyright.
We're on to something.
Copyright. Randomized combos every run.
Yeah, that would be great.
Complete nightmare.
That would be a nightmare. Yeah. Well, I think that's it for VGB show today. I had a great time with you, Zub, as always. Let me give a quick shout out. I think everyone here already follows Zub, but if you don't, what the heck are you doing? Go follow him. He's awesome.
I'm here.
We will be back. I think are we gonna do Saturday this upcoming weekend?
I think so. So. I'll let you know if anything changes, but yeah, otherwise it'll be Sunday.
Cool. And thanks for all of you guys hanging out with us and listening to us chit chat and share our opinions about one of our favorite genres. And yeah, that's about it. Do you guys want to raid out? How do you want to do a little raid real quick? What's for VGB next time? We don't have a topic yet, actually.
If you want to suggest topics for us to talk about, we will absolutely do it.
Yeah, I'm open for suggestions. I don't think that we've had our Metroidvania talk yet.
Oh yeah, we could definitely talk about Metroidvania.
So maybe since we talked about rogue style games this week, we could do Metroidvanias next week. And I know, I'll be in so hey, I'm all for it. It's all good.
You can teach us the error of our ways, Taya.
Exactly. I think we're just gonna end off tonight without a raid, but just know that oh no, you know what? I am gonna raid our really a good friend of the channel, Brew, is playing some Tomb Raider. She's the best Tomb Raider player I know, so I'll just dump you guys on her. Sneaky sends love. Thank you, Maldwin. Constantina, I appreciate that. Just in time for the raid, just in time. So we'll raid Brew. She's a sweetheart. Go ahead and she might have like a follower only mode style thing on. I think she used to. Maybe she doesn't anymore. Oh no, she does. She does. So, by no means feel any pressure if you don't want to follow or anything, but she is a really cool person. So I'm just going to send you guys to her, and we will talk more next week. Here's a little raid message. Bam, bam, bam. Hold up. There you go.
Wham, bam.
Wham, bam. There you go. All right, I'm sending you guys off. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.